Hello, everybody, and welcome to coverage of the fourth quarterfinal of the Premodern Fall Brawl Top 8. I'm Michael Hoyp. I'm joined in the booth once again by Lanny Huang. How's it going, Lanny?
It is going great. I'm excited.
I would say you should be excited.
Some creatures. Well, I have no horse in this race, but if I did, my horse would be a little green lady in a field with a whip.
I will say I get a little bit disappointed anytime I make these graphics and have to do the Gro-A-Tog because I really like the art on Quirion Dryad, but the way I have my little thumbnails, it looks so awful. Like all the art, there's so much blank space up at the top, and it's just like the actual focus of the art is just covered up by the text. So I try Quirion Dryad. I like you. I still use you, but I get a little disappointed anytime I had to use it in the thumbnail. But
well, the size between the Phyrexian Dreadnought and the Quirion Dryad is very accurate in the thumbnail. I suspect we're going to see we're going to see who wins this face-off. That said, yours truly has had a 13-13 Quirion Dryad on the battlefield before.
I was gonna say I would be very impressed if a Quirion Dryad got bigger than a Dreadnought. So
you can always dream.
So if you haven't caught on, we are featuring the matchup of Gro-A-Tog against Mono Blue Stiflenought. Robin Lundh will be playing the Gro-A-Tog list, while David Raczka will be piloting the Mono Blue Stiflenought. Let's take a quick moment to learn a little bit about our players. First, Robin Lundh out of Chicago, Illinois. He also marked himself that he's from Sweden. I think Robin, he's lived in the United States long enough that we can claim him as our own, right? This is another top 8 for the United States, right? That's what we
say. I mean, when he's doing well, he's ours.
Yeah.
And then when he's just out making an ass of himself, we're just like, oh, that's typical Swedish behavior.
Yeah. So he finished with a 7-run record, which was good for the 4th seed. And he's playing the Gro-A-Tog list, as we talked about. He says he's still pretty new to the deck, but he says, I think I'm pretty good against Blue-White Landstill and Dreadnought, which is ideal for him. I feel fine versus Goblins and probably beat a lot of Tier 2 decks. But he says he struggles huge dog to Sly and at least a wiener dog to Elves. I've never heard that term. We'll just say that's a Swedish thing, right? Calling yourself a wiener dog.
Total Swedish thing.
He noted his sideboard MVP as Annul. Maybe? Question mark, I guess. So I guess maybe he's not sure that.
I mean, he's not going to say the sideboard MVP is like engineered plague. It's just like, so when it comes in, it's good.
Okay. Moving on. Why'd you choose his deck? In short, he had some other words, but it was basically the sum was it's fun. Would he make any changes? He's not sure at this point. Like he said, he's newer to the deck. There's not a lot of flex spots. Though I feel like almost in this list, or in Gro-A-Tog, there might be more than some other lists, but do seem to be losing a significant amount of game one, so there must be something he can change. Maybe fit some Swords to Plowshares in the main again, is what he said. For exciting moments, he said he zero-axed a lot, so lots of card draw and going through his deck, and then hit with big things mostly, which I guess, I mean, if you're winning with Gro-A-Tog, that's probably pretty good. That's pretty exciting, I guess, growing a Gro-A-Tog, so... one time he cast all 4 Meddling Mages against Stasis. He said that was fun. His favorite hobbies are highlighted as reading, policy wonking, which I just learned. We discussed, not policy working, policy wonking, climbing, Dota 2, and music. He said people should root for him because he's not on full English breakfast, as I have another typo. So they probably shouldn't. He said, go root for Galen and McLean. Well, those players have already played their quarterfinal matches, so now...
And they've won?
Yeah,
so he sent his energy in the right direction.
Yeah. And anything else you'd want to share? He says, I'm looking for altered/doodled full English breakfast cards. Sell them to me. So...
I guess... Robin's heart's not really in it today, you know? He just wishes that he could be playing Hermit Feb.
Yeah.
Not sure how the plot armor gods will smile upon him here.
On the other side of the table will be David Raczka from Rochester, New York. Also finished with a record of 7-1. Just slightly worse tiebreakers. He finished the 5th seed, which will likely mean that he's on the draw for the first game in this match. He's playing the Mono Blue Stiflenought. He said he's favored against slow decks or decks without a main deck answer to Dreadnought, which hopefully nowadays, I mean, I feel like Dreadnought's pretty mainstay in the metagame. I think most decks should think about Stiflenought. So, but he says struggles versus a quick clock plus answers the Dreadnought. and highlights the sideboard MVP as Flash of Insight. Why did you choose your deck? So this is like a real question, I guess, that you and Flores have kind of highlighted on your podcasts of why play Mono Blue Stiflenought rather than the Blue White or maybe the other versions. Said I didn't have time to brew, but Mishra's Factory seemed like a good idea to counteract Meddling Mage and want to try them out in a Stiflenought shell. I guess might have more questions on that for him because I guess is that just a backup plan if when some Meddling Mage resolves that you can just attack them with a Mishra's Factory? I guess that's what he's.
We'll find out. There's a Meddling Mage in Robin's deck.
Would you make any changes? He says optimal land count is probably 18.5. Wanted to try cutting an island and a reality ripple for more impact spells. So summary: minus a reality ripple, minus an island, plus a mana leak, plus a misdirection, and maybe take out a misdirection and add a powder keg or something else. Highlighted exciting moments as one versed Alvaro with only one card left in the library between our two decks with Mishra's Factory attacks. And said it was fun chatting with Patrick Pert about brews we've been working on. So he highlights his favorite hobbies as crafts, disc golf, board games, kayaking, and dog adventures. And why should people root for you? Once I tune up a more competitiveness in decks, I'm going to release the spice. So I guess he's saying that his mono blue
this is already this is not spicy enough.
Well, this
is like a mild spice.
Yeah. And anything else you want to share? He says looking to plan a pre-modern tournament in upstate New York with fun gifts like enamel pins, another typo I see, stamp cards, embroidered patches, and etc. for next year. So if you're in that area, look for social media posts from David to see if you could attend that tournament.
Yeah, the scene from Rochester is like, another one of those shadowy cabals where they don't have too many like out and about representatives sharing the goings on. So, we only hear that they like get together every week or every month, and there's like 20 of them, and they just keep all their Mishra's Factory tech to themselves until it comes time to top 8 the Fall Brawl.
Oh no, I've just noticed in the chat, my daughter is now watching me. For better or for worse. So everyone be on your best behavior. She's spamming in the chat.
I'm hoping. Oh no.
Don't worry. Anyways, let's jump down to the decks so we can see what our players have in store for us. So first up, we have the Mono Blue Stiflenought list in the words of Shrimp. So an artistic choice from David. This list is pretty standard for Mono Blue. Really, the only notable difference is the 3 Mishra's Factory. And other than that, I think this list is pretty typical from what we've seen. This deck list has been trending downwards in popularity since the rise of Blue-White Stiflenought. It had last year, I think around the end of the calendar year, it had a lot of popularity. So do you want to make a quick note about the Mono Blue Stiflenought, Lanny?
I mean, we really just have to talk about the Mishra's Factory, right? So that's sort of in place of maybe a few islands and maybe the 4th Daze. So probably like 2 islands and a Daze for Mishra's Factory. That's going to give this deck a meaningfully similar blue-white impression where it can put pressure on the opponent in an alternate fashion that besides Dreadnought. So it kind of gives it that quote unquote second gear to switch to if the situation calls for it. I don't mind putting that that form of plan into your mana base instead of into your non-land cards. There's obviously always a benefit to that. We just saw how good that was for the Rock just a couple days ago, and the only comment I have beyond that is just that the text on Meddling Mage is very relevant, and that's why that's why we do it. But rock solid, your foils and gushes are always going to hit. They're going to hit a little bit less so with the factories, but not so much. And this deck is very, very powerful, and it's going to do what it's going to do, which is put a 12/12 into play and attack with it.
Yep. All right. And then for Robin's list, we see the Gro-A-Tog list. So this is something that you have taken akin to. This is a deck that you love. Realistically, it's really just it's the rock, Lanny. This is your
Yeah,
rock.
this is my rock. This is my, you thought you were gonna get me with that. You thought I was gonna be like, no, you see the no. This is the rock.
It's just
this is the rock for me.
It's all the matchups you have a game against. It's just you got some blue cards in there. Do you want to talk about the Gro-A-Tog list and then briefly how it interacts in this matchup? Because I know you have highlighted that you are not unhappy to be playing against Stiflenought with a Gro-A-Tog list.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Robin, first of all, highlighted that he loses a lot of game ones. This is definitely a deck that can lose a lot of game ones, but the power of playing 11 cantrips for Gush and sometimes cantripping Fire Ice is that once you board in your sideboard cards, you're just going to see them far more often than really any other deck. So this deck uh, almost always has a transformative sideboard in the sense because in game one, you kind of have this plan that where like you can do Meddling Mage, you can do Quirion Dryad, sometimes you can tag a couple creatures with Fire Ice. But after you sideboard, all of a sudden you're just a control deck that has access to 4 Engineered Plague, or 4 Chill, or 4 sort of Disenchant and Annul effects. So nothing wrong with the deck. You are going to lose a lot of game ones. Armageddon can sometimes steal some game ones, and of course you can always have an explosive game one. The way it lines up into Dreadnought was highlighted by Raczka in his interview bit, where he's just saying, well, if you have pressures in answer to Dreadnought, then you're going to be in a good place, because short of hands that are the nuts, where you have your turn 2 Dreadnought on the play with Daze protection, or with foil protection, or with Daze into counterspell protection, or with Vision Charm protection, shortly put protection, your opponent's going to have a bad time. But anytime you don't have that, if your opponent puts the Dreadnought player on a clock where they can't just like spend as many turns as they want cantripping, and force them to play Dreadnought sort of out of position where they don't have the mana developed that like they want to, or they don't have that foil to protect it, or that extra Vision Charm to protect it, they could be in a really bad spot. It's especially important to note that the resistance from Robin in the form of Annul, counterspells, and foils means that extra copies of Vision Charm aren't necessarily going to be turned on for Raczka as protection for Dreadnought. So he has an extra hurdle to get through that he normally doesn't have to deal with non-blue decks, which is just that Robin's going to know to counter Raczka's Dreadnoughts, and that could strand extra Stifle or Vision Charm effects in his hand that he was planning to use as gas. So the advantage that Raczka has is he has a full suite of 4 counterspell and 4 foil, up against just 2 counterspells and 2 foils on the side of Robin. And then also of note, I love this matchup. I love 2 low curve decks with Daze going up against each other, because Daze is just like one of those, it just completely like turns into this mind game puzzle situation of players just trying to figure out when they can land their stuff and when they can afford to not play around Daze. I think it takes a lot of skill to do that, and that also highlights one of the important intricacies of the matchup, where if Robin puts enough pressure on, then his Dazes will be turned on for the entire game. And if he lets Raczka develop his mana base, then once Robin's Dazes are turned off, Raczka will be in a good position. And then the pendulum is going to swing back, because once Robin's drawn enough cards, he'll have enough answers to just completely power through whatever Raczka does. So it's favored for Gro-A-Tog. Robin had confided in me that he didn't feel confident through his testing. I'm definitely down to be surprised, and I think it's going to be a great match.
Okay. If you want to let our players know that we can begin, I did throw up a poll for our audience. You guys are able to chime in and make a prediction on who you think is going to win the match. But here we see Robin Lundh with the Gro-A-Tog list on the left, up against David Raczka with the Mono Blue Stiflenought on the right. And we're about to kick things off for a best of 5 match for our last quarterfinal of the Fall Brawl. All right. So one of the things that I've played with the Gro-A-Tog list is the question of how often you keep hands that don't have anything proactive. If you just have cantrips and maybe like a counterspell, are you keen to mulligan those if you need to try and find a Meddling Mage or a Quirion Dryad, or how often do you mulligan / keep those hands?
I never mulligan. I've never mulliganed in my life. I'm just not a mulliganer.
How lucky.
I'm just like lands and spells. Let's go. Robin's got a land and it looks like he's got a spell. No, you this is a deck you can't afford to mulligan to action. Because you have 12 cards in your deck that you have 8 cards in your deck. You have 8 turn 2 plays. And you really just can't afford to give up material in your Mox Diamond deck to go looking for them. So if Robin doesn't have a turn 2 Meddling Mage, that's just plot armor in the work.
Okay. Yeah, Meddling Mage is definitely a card that Robin is looking for in this matchup, especially against the mono blue lists where it's nearly impossible to remove once it's resolved.
Yeah, granted, the blue-white list only runs, up to 3. I mean, I haven't seen a blue-white list that has 4 Swords of Plowshares mains. It's typically 2. I like to play 1. So this one Reality Ripple is going to do the same work as 1 copy of Swords of Plowshares, effectively.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about it in that aspect. And almost in some ways, like, if a Meddling Mage comes down, it's easier to play a Mishra's Factory than it is to resolve a Meddling Mage if you're playing like a mirror. But
exactly, yeah.
So
we got dueling portents from both players. Robin, of course, has the best card in Premodern, Mox Diamond, on the battlefield, and he has it on turn 1, which is the most important turn in Premodern for Mox Diamond. Most important turn in Premodern is probably turn 2. Calling it. You got Oath of Druid, Survival of the Fittest, Phyrexian Dreadnought, Meddling Mage. Those all come down on 2. Two's the most important turn. Right. Games are won and lost on those cards. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're just going to see a lot of players fiddling with their decks. And if you're a gambling man, we're at 44-1 odds on the channel point bet for
if you got a few, you're feeling lucky that if I just throw it down. I mean, I guess I was a little surprised. I mean, I thought this matchup was like pretty lopsided, but from just the conversation you said you had with Robin, with a small amount of testing that he had, that it was, I guess, closer to that impression. So maybe not a bad bet to make.
I mean, evidently there's something that I don't know. I mean, granted, I haven't played the matchup a ton of times. It's just I've won every time, so I've just been like, okay, well, seems good to me. And I haven't played that much against blue white, but of course this isn't blue white. And I've played 0 reps against Mishra's Factory, so there's that as well.
Yes, yeah.
So Robin's going for a Quirion Dryad protected from Daze. So this is what we're talking about with pressure, right? Robin picked up the green source. He can play around Daze. He's got a threat. So this is the turn for Dreadnought to be answered. And then as soon as Robin untaps with this Quirion Dryad and can get cooking, it's soon going to be very uncomfortable for Raczka if he's just going to spend this turn casting Impulse to compose a hand that's strong enough to contend with the starting as a 1/1 Quirion Dryad. There's a few things to point out. One is that David Raczka's deck contains the card Gush, which can get you back into any game. So it could come down to just whomever draws more of their Gushes.
Yeah, I would say I was really thinking that the game would hinge on like an early Meddling Mage, but just having a Quirion Dryad pretty like early, so that was turn 2, right?
Yes.
That just makes like every card, and especially given that like David hasn't presented a Dreadnought already, this Dryad could get really big really quick, and it's again not easy for the mono blue list to remove a creature once it's in play. And so
this is the closest corollary that we have to Tarmogoyf in the format.
Yep.
Terravores and whatever nonsense aside, and absolutely. The mono blue main deck has no answers to Quirion Dryad. So the best that we can see is it gets fogged for a turn by a Reality Ripple or blocked by a 12/12.
Is there not
So
the singleton copy of Boomerang? That's usually a one of, but still.
I'm looking at the list and I don't see it.
Okay.
So David Raczka lives without fear of permanence.
Man, I love Boomerang. I don't know. I've drawn up some mono blue lists, not Stiflenought, and I've put 4 Boomerang in them. I played Boomerang in my Psychatog list. I don't know. I think it's a nice little catch-all that you're never. I mean, you're never super excited. Oh, maybe you're excited against Dreadnought decks, but you're never unexcited to see it. So, what's your thought about Boomerang?
I do not share your enthusiasm for Boomerang. I love the card. I love Recoil even more. But there's just too many permanents that cost 1 and 2 mana around, and because of that, it's really hard to get your tempo from a Boomerang. But you know, I'm down for a boom and good time.
Yeah.
We got an End-Step Ice. Which is just going to put 1 counter on the Dryad as soon as Robin finds his dice.
Yeah. I haven't seen it enter. I mean, like, okay, there we go. A little bit delayed, but yep.
Yeah, a little bit delayed. Robin tapping it aggressively, just being like, I remembered. I mean, I thought I saw him tap it lightly. Okay. Oh, it was an upkeep ice. Okay, love to see it. Don't mind it at all. It's keeping Robin's Daze online. I think if Robin had a Daze though, I would have dazed that impulse, just like on site. Probably just like daze the first spell that I can. Okay. Depends on the texture of your hand, of course, but it's kind of weird to say. But like the Dreadnought combo is mana intensive. Like David Raczka has to tap 2 mana on his own turn in order to make a Dreadnought, 2 mana and 2 cards. So if Robin has like double Daze, that's still like not a bad spot to be.
So at what point, like, does David feel like he needs to commit to a combo? If he's like, maybe he's waiting for Dreadnought plus the Stifle or Vision Charm plus a Counterspell backup. I guess, like, at what point does the Dryad get too big, or like how amount of pressure is it? Just like one swing, like it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want the literal answer to your question, it would be if he's under mate in 2, right?
Yeah.
So he obviously needs to do some form of math. We just saw a Portent get counterspelled. Love that. I'll daze it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll take both my triggers, and I've got a 4/4. Yeah. So there was a turn where Raczka literally, it doesn't matter if he plays Dreadnought, right? Because he'll just play a Dreadnought, and then he can never attack with it because he'll die on the backswing. Mm-hmm. Robin doesn't have his City of Brass in play, and Raczka doesn't have his Mishra's Factory access. So right now we're at a point where we're seeing it right now, right? So Raczka's at 17. He's about to go down to 13. If he gets hit by the Dryad one more time, then he's already going to be in a mate in 2 situation where he can't get 2 attacks in with his Dreadnought without ceding 2 attacks from Robin. So yeah, this is exactly the spot that Robin wants to be in. And it's going to look even tastier if he has a copy of Gush. I think that was an extremely aggressive counterspell. What it tells me is that Raczka is just trying to use his mana. Mm-hmm. Oh my god. Yeah, this is okay. So I don't love this play because it's unforced. So Gush is a free spell. Robin has already made his land drop for the turn, and it's unlikely that he's going to use the mana, but of course he is going to use the mana. So Robin's pressing his advantage. He must have a foil in hand. So he smells blood. This is awesome. So I had the opinion that I would wait to Gush, right? But yeah, this is super sweet because I think it was an error to counterspell something so so lowly is important. So Raczka might have been flush in counterspells, or might have been in a position where his plan was to, no matter what, like cast a Dreadnought the next turn, and then he just like needed to get some form of material out of Robin's hand. So so that Portent shuffling away a bunch of non-counter spells could have been super relevant. But yeah, from that position with the Daze, I mean, just this whole sequence. I mean, this is just like Gro-A-Tog 101, right? So the whole sequence started with an upkeep ice on Raczka's third land. So that ice then set up the Daze on the counterspell. So even if that counterspell tried to tag the Meddling Mage, it would have had no shot because of Robin's Daze. So then Robin got to cast 4 spells in one turn and grow his Dryad to a point where it didn't matter what Raczka did, because that next Dryad hit was going to put him at too low of life total. And then the Meddling Mage was just icing on the cake. He didn't need the Mage. If he just has Counterspell in his hand, then he's pretty rolled up. But yeah, love that sequence from Robin, and it really doesn't get better than that for him. So I think he did find the top half of his draws. He had the early Dryad, he had Gush, he was able to land a Daze, and I think I don't think Raczka missed a land drop, but yeah, I mean, Robin sort of closed the game on turn 4 there.
So chat was like, I guess, commenting on the counterspell used from David, and I mean, I don't see his hand, but I actually can see how it makes sense. Like the likelihood that you're going to win that game, like if you just do nothing, then Robin's hand improves, like in theory, because of Portent. And if he does have a counterspell for your Dreadnought combo, you're already in a bad spot. I guess, I mean, like worst case scenario is like Meddling Mage, but you're already in a bad spot even without the Meddling Mage. So like, if we're just discounting that, I think it's fine that you just say, hey, maybe there's a chance that like Robin still needs a way to answer a Dreadnought, and me countering it like in this spot could provide an opportunity, like a window for me to sneak it. And I'm also assuming that he had multiple counter spells. So like if the game just like, if the turn just like gets passed after that, then he's kind of in the same spot where he can either fight this turn or wait a little bit longer. So I don't mind the counterspell in that situation, because I think like David's in a bad spot either way. But obviously, like the worst case scenario, I think happened. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I concur. So David is faced with the unsavory prospect of Robin just playing the Portent and then saying go.
Mhm.
And then yeah, if he's flushed in counterspell and he doesn't have an impulse or other instant speed cantrip to use at the end of Robin's turn, then he's never going to have enough mana to just deploy Dreadnought with counterspell backup with Daze backup.
Mhm.
So it's better to be proactive with your counterspells if if all you have in hand is like Dreadnoughts and Stifles of Vintage Charms, because then your constraining factor no longer becomes cards, it becomes mana. So I definitely think that the pressure from the Quirion Dryad created that, right? Because obviously he wouldn't tag that Portent
Yeah.
under no pressure. But as soon as the Dryad came into play, then he was playing in a game that he would eventually lose
Mhm.
over the course of attacks, unless he starts taking some actions. And you know even something like a Portent, I mean, that's 3 cards plus a potential shuffle. So um it could easily be a game-winning Portent. And again, like I said, the Meddling Mage felt like it was just, it just didn't matter.
Mhm.
It was just like plenty fine. So we got Robin on a multi 6. Um, and yeah, we're gonna open up with the best turn 1 play in Premodern after Mox Diamond, which is Portent.
I was to say David quickly resolved that Portent. He didn't give any respect for Robin just to foil his Portent.
Yeah, well, so David thinks that, even David knows that countering Portent is ridiculous, and yet I was going to make the comment that Robin's deck contains Flooded Strand, so he's already at a tremendous advantage. And yeah, we've got that Flooded Strand showing up to the party. Yeah, Flooded Strand and Wooded Foothills, man. What are like just their stock in Premodern is so far ahead of the other 3. It's actually kind of unbelievable.
I've never thought about it. I I play a surprisingly
You play a surprisingly large amount of the other fetch lands.
Of Windswept Heath.
Yeah, Windswept Heath is defensible.
Yeah, but it's probably not. I always have it in like a black, green, white deck, and like so.
I mean, Windswept Heath has higher stock in Premodern than Savannah does in Legacy. So.
Oh yeah.
Savannahs are like $5. It's like so funny. You could use Savannah as a coaster and be like, fine.
Chad's commenting on the basic land game. Who do you feel like is ahead there? Are you a basic land? I don't feel like I've talked to you too much about your basic land art choices.
I have like a bunch of unglued. I don't have like enough unglued to like play 12 unglued islands in my.
Okay.
I don't think I have enough unglued for my Dreadnought deck, but I have enough unglued for all my other decks that don't play a lot of basic lands. And then I used unglued.
I'll say I don't
LobsterCon.
I don't dislike Robin's island choice. I do like the Onslaught Islands. There's one I like much more, but the Portal Island that David has is one of my favorites of all sets. So I would give the nod to David in the situation.
Yeah. I think there's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to island art. I personally like the very dark blue invasion basic islands. Those are the ones that I use online. And then I love using unglued lands just because of like my nostalgia. Like those were the cool, like those you could do that or gurus if you wanted to like pip out. I mean, obviously like arena and like whatever misprints or whatever. But let's see if this Portent gets counterspelled. Honestly, it's pretty like Robin is tapping out on his own turn into Raczka's turn 3, which threatens a Dreadnought with second charm protection.
And so if Robin faces a resolved Dreadnought, does he have any good answers to it in the main?
He has no answers. His only answer at that point is to make a 12-13.
Okay.
Which kind of bites it to Raczka just vision charming the Dreadnought again. So we should see a jam here, but we do not. So Robin is going to get away with tapping out for a turn, but he's also telegraphing quite strongly that he does not have interaction. So this is a kind of awkward spot where Robin does need to get bloodthirsty, and he's lucky that Raczka is only showing 2 lands up, so now he can play Meddling Mage through Daze and have his own Daze to back up against the counterspell. So if Robin can put that sequence together, he's in great shape. But if he continues to do nothing, then things could conceivably start going downhill for him as David reaches sort of that critical 5 land threshold that's going to turn on all his counterspells and whatnot. Yeah, and this is absolutely a Volrath Shapeshifter Robin slabbed coaster of choice. Oh, it's just a land pass. Okay, so we're land passing it back. So 2 things of note. One, Raczka had no cantrip at the end of Robin's turn. So that puts him out on impulse. So his hand is either all counterspells or all dreadnoughts here, or all vision charms and no dreadnoughts. This is going to be a great test of how patient players are. This is the stage of the game that I'm no longer interested in casting Gush just for funsies.
Sure.
So Raczka has already reached a point where he can just wait until he has 6 islands in play and start hard casting Gushes on Robin's end step. And once again, he's going to need the mana. So at this stage in the game, I would only Gush if I have foil in my hand and we're taking a fundamental turn, or if I'm casting it for 5 mana. And if Robin plays his 4th land drop, him casting Gush is slightly defrayed by the presence of Mox Diamond. But I would still be eyeing hard casting Gush from Robin's seat. And And even this play, if he doesn't have a land drop to follow up, I would have just played a City of Brass, and kept the Mox Diamond for the potential future Gush turn to produce extra mana.
Okay.
He may just do the inverse by gushing now, but yeah, once again, gushing into 3 open mana from Raczka. So granted, 3 is a 4 is a bigger break point than 3, right? So if Raczka had 4 mana up, and Robin's basically forcing his turn, it'd be a lot scarier for Robin, but knowing that he just has to fight Counterspell, being able to pay for Daze, this might be the turn that Robin commits a creature to the table. The second diamond is really unfortunate for Robin. So he's playing a super low resource game. So this is a Meddling Mage or bust play right here, and it's just a Dryad, unfortunately. So Raczka's going to be quick to counter that. We have 1 blue mana floating still for Robin.
So if Robin has, I guess, like, would David be willing to like foil this if it were countered back?
I think that he would, because his only answer to an onboard Quirion is going to be whatever. But yeah, if
I would say, is it possible
bait,
that it's bait? Yeah.
Oh, he wants to foil this,
Yeah.
and Robin is going to have Counterspell available, but not Counterspell pay for Daze. So yeah, we're going to see a Gush foil. So I like this play from Robin, using Quirion Dryad as a test spell, and I think David was probably, I mean, David has to have a second counter here because he's been doing nothing for the last few turns. So, but even this is like such a strong hindrance to his development. And if this counterspell, I would counterspell here just to force David to pick up another island. Because then what's he going to do for Robin's Dazes later on? I mean, it's hard to say because Robin, I don't know how many cards Robin has in hand, but I have to imagine it's somewhere around 3. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, this counterspell's unfortunately going to catch Daze, and Robin won't be able to Daze back. But the fortunate part is he'll pick up the island. And if Robin has counterspell, he absolutely has to jam it here, right? Because the upside of resolving this Meddling Mage. Oh, hard cast Daze into bounce Daze. So Robin's hand is truly horrible. And this was like the only time that he could make this play.
I like David pointing to his land. He's like, "Wait, are you sure you want to cast that?" Like,
yeah. And then that's my last resource, says Robin, and David's like, "Yeah, of course I have this card too." And Robin's last card better be a Meddling Mage because he's down to nothing here.
Well, that was an exchange like that. I feel like David is really feeling good about now, like with so few cards at Robin's hand. So
yeah, well, both players cast Gush, but unfortunately, the player that has to run out a bunch of Mox Diamonds, and from a spot where David can pay for Daze, unfortunately for Robin, that just like didn't work out. So, and he might have been fine if that City of Brass was an island. Luckily, he's not facing Drown Dreadnought this turn, so we're back at parity with Robin having much more tempo than David, but extremely short on cards.
So if Robin had done that sequence where he doesn't cast the Quirion Dryad and he leads with the Meddling Mage, how does that exchange? So
it stops at the it
stops the foil.
Dazes get involved, yeah, because David would have had the extra
David
just would have been counterspell.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have been counterspell, counter your counter, then foil your counter, and then that would have been basically the end of the discussion. It's possible, yeah, because there was, because the Quirion Dryad was basically a 2 mana duress, well, like a 2 mana for 2 mana exchange.
I guess, yeah, Robin never had a foil or a counterspell of his own. It was just Dazes and...
It was just 2 Dazes,
and 2 threats, okay.
So it would have been nice if Robin could have, again, if that City of Brass was an island, then he actually would have won the exchange, which would have been unbelievable. But unfortunately, the City of Brass was a City of Brass because, Gro-A-Tog has to run City of Brass. That's just the world that we live in. So now... yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if Robin should have been more patient. I think it allowed him to be proactive in a decent spot. I mean, I hope one of these cards is Counterspell. It's not Counterspell.
I would say one of the
Okay, I
things
hope
is
one of these
like
cards is Psychatog.
I don't know how patient David goes just against a bunch of open mana, because obviously it feels bad if you're ever at the exchange of where you're committing 2 cards and losing that counter fight. So maybe Robin did have more time, even if he didn't have a strong hand. If he just kind of postures and bluffs that he does, then maybe David waits longer.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually really interesting, right? Both players are playing a Dreadnought deck. Robin's Dreadnought is Meddling Mage, and if it resolves, he wins. David's Dreadnought is Phyrexian Dreadnought, and if it resolves, more or less, he wins. So Robin essentially took that turn to jam. Pick him up.
Casting at Armageddon.
Yeah, okay. So Robin's hand was just horrible this game. He had so much of his stuff that was like bad and didn't matter.
Since this is a pre-boarded game and the Dreadnought's already in play, is that even like really an issue for David?
It is if David doesn't have an island here and if Robin has a Psychatog.
Okay.
Because then they'll just chill for a little bit and then Psychatog could get in for 20. Robin wants a Psychatog, he'll probably draw a Dryad or a Portent or a Meddling Mage or a Flooded Strand or a Daze.
He did have the Dryad. 1-1 against the 12-12. I guess the thumbnail pictures were accurate.
Yeah, thumbnail picture did come to pass. Okay, so geez, I wish I could pull playback. So the sequence was Robin, Gush, Float, Double Diamond, land drop. So it's possible that the sequence could have gone differently if I mean, I'm trying to think if that could have been optimized slightly better from Robin's side, but
I would say it could have been at a point where he discarded I don't know if he discarded an island to a Mox Diamond as compared to playing a City of Brass.
He pitched. Oh yeah, that's a good point.
So that because you were saying that turn when it came to if he had an extra island, then he would have been able to pay the alternate cost of Daze. That could have impacted it, but I do have the sideboard up for Robin. So there are 4 chills, 4 engineered plague, 2 disenchant, 2 annuls, and 3 swords to plowshares. So the swords, annuls, and disenchants seem very appealing. What cards do you think come out in this matchup?
Robin's going to take out the Fire Ices, the Get-ins, and 1 copy of Daze.
So 4, 6, 7, 4. Okay. So pretty straightforward. Massive upgrade. I mean, all these cards are very impactful. The removal spells and then also additional counter spells that you had mentioned. Being able to fight the Dreadnought when they're on the stack is good because it doesn't allow the player to utilize a card like Vision Charm. Though I think, I don't know if David has misdirections as part of his plan.
Yeah, well, you can't misdirect an annul. So
yeah, but I would say it is good against the
yeah, absolutely. Although David can, of course, misdirect a disenchant to one of Robin's Moxes.
Okay, so the sideboard for the Mono Blue Stiflenought: 2 Blue Elemental Blast, 2 Hydroblast, 2 Brain Freeze, 2 Powder Keg, 2 Flash of Insight, 2 Misdirection, and 3 Annul. So, I mean, Flash of Insight is a way to... Flash of Insight or Brain Freeze are angles. Misdirection is also something you might want. And Powder Keg, I guess, is a response to the 2 threats. The 2 mana threats.
You're absolutely forced to bring in the Powder Kegs, of course. And the good news is that Dryad and Meddling Mage both cost 2 mana. The bad news is that that Powder Keg needs to land. Like Robin's gonna see it coming. We'll put it that way. That so he'll be able to plan accordingly. But yeah, aside from these 2 Powder Kegs and 2 misdirections, I'm not too hyped about anything else in Raczka's sideboard. I think that Plowshares would have definitely been good here. But yeah, I mean, I would probably just trim the flex cards. I would just cut the flash, cut the reality ripple. Probably trim. I might even trim some copies of Opt or trim a land, and so that I can fit in 2 kegs and 2 Misdirection.
I guess I didn't realize that David had a main deck flash, because I think I've only ever seen one copy in the 75 of the Dreadnought lists, and so David has access to one in the main and two in the sideboard. That is, I think, the most I've seen Flash of Insight played of any deck. That seems like a lot. Like this, the second one seems way worse than the first.
I mean, I'll just throw a quick shout out to the card Deep Analysis here. If you're gonna go grindy in the post board, I like Deep Analysis a lot more than Flash of Insight because you go +3 instead of +1. But Flash of Insight is definitely a lot more lean, and
Yeah.
we're off to the races in the sideboard game. So back
Okay.
to both players keeping 7, and we've got, of course, the best fetch in the game opening things up. I'm gonna tell them that they're good to start.
All right, so I think we both agree that Robin's deck gets better than David's deck in the post board.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robin taking one of the game ones in which he was, at least on paper, unfavored in a best of 5 is going to be a great benefit to him.
Okay.
So having to go 2-1 in post sideboard games, and we just know for a fact that this is going to five games, because why else wouldn't it? Is going to be a huge relief to Robin. Of course, Robin would have preferred to just win a game 1 in a best of 3. But
I'll say one of the big textures is like that now Robin has a way of, or a pretty consistent way with 5 copies of cards to deal with a Resolved Dreadnought. It really just tames this, like, it's not all about like the stack as it was before.
exactly, the turn is not going to be the last turn that he has to worry. And just the biggest reason is because Robin is going to have double the mana to interact with the Dreadnought. He'll be able to interact with it on the turn that the Dreadnought is cast, then the turn after it's cast, and then even if he can take 12 damage, the turn after that. So
Yeah, I mean, so David in some ways has a little bit like that, but the problem is like the powder keg is just not an immediate answer to any of the threats that Robin has, and so like plus there's a little bit more counterplay. Like a disenchant could take off a powder keg before it gets to 2, so it's just not a reliable source, and also just like also not a timely way to deal with the threats that Robin might present.
yeah. Although it could be timely if all Robin has is a Meddling Mage.
I would say it's certainly a better feeling to have powder kegs in your deck than not. So,
from David's seat, I might even be inclined to powder keg some diamonds.
yeah, I definitely can see matchups or like situations where the mana is really important, and you're just like, I'm going to try and win it on this front. So,
yeah, I mean, in the PSS, Alvaro saw my lineup of 12 Mox Diamonds, and he was frothing at the mouth at the concept of the idea that he could pick off a couple powder kegs with one, or pick off a couple diamonds with one powder keg activation, which is a 4-for-1, by the way.
yeah.
So you do love to see it. So this pass from Robin means that he's already posturing to be the control, and this have done nothing up until turn 2 from David tells us that he might just be once again a hand with all combo or all counter spells. But the game going long post sideboard is now going to favor Robin, as he's able to accumulate likely more resources than David's going to be able to handle. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting fundamentally because Robin has access to Meddling Mage. He can be both the proactive and the reactive deck. So Robin has complete control of when the action is going to happen, because he can just wait if his hand tells him to wait, and he can jam if his hand tells him to jam. Raczka really only has the option between jam now or jam later, based on how many lands he has in play and the texture of his hand, like how much answers that he thinks Robin has. So this was true in game 1, but in the post sideboard games, if I'm David, I'm thinking to myself, how fast can I cast this Dreadnought, or possibly he might be unsure if Robin boarded out Dazes or something like that. So he can even be more bold in the early game. It's going to be an interesting dynamic, but yeah, I mean, geez, what a matchup! Like it's just so exciting. Both players have Gush, but there's just incentives to be doing things early, incentives to be doing things mid, and incentives to draw out late. And conceivably for both players, that can be the case. Like if David just gets to a point where his hand is Dreadnought, Charm, a bunch of extra charms and counter spells, um, you know, and he has Gush double foil or something like that. The Gush powers the double foil. He could do, which is one of my favorite play patterns, which is just wait until you have 7 cards in hand, cast Portent, start your next card with turn with 9 cards in hand, and then cast Gush and have 13 cards in hand.
I say so. This is an early Gush cast from Robin.
Yeah, Robin is gonna play double Mox Diamond. Well, okay, so one, of course, he doesn't have his land drop this turn, so that's likely why he wanted to go for it. But this definitely cues action, and yeah, it's a very limp Gush if he has no follow up with his floating mana. But yeah, you get put in tough spots like this sometimes where this is what Itai ran into in the finals LobsterCon, was just like, I'm gonna miss my land drop. I want to hit all my land drops. I guess I'll just Gush to hit my land drop, but that doesn't really work because you'll start the next turn with one less land than you did earlier. So yeah,
right, at least we're
impressed with little Dryad.
Robin's able to muster a threat, but I guess I would say if nothing happened, would that incentivize David to play slow or faster? I think it would slow. Like if Robin's not able to hit land drops and his hand is full, then he's just gonna be discarding the hand size.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it also implies that his hand is all good stuff, but if he's missing land drops, then his hand does not contain the card foil. So, it could be. I mean, mana screw beats mana flood, right? So, it could be the situation where the constraining factor for Robin becomes mana instead of cards, and you would want to strike while the iron's hot. But granted, you can't just granted, like we mentioned, Robin has double mana because he can respond on the turn that Dreadnought's jammed, and then work on the turn that he untaps next. So, to answer your question, I would still want to reach a position where I have something like 3 or 5 lands in play. But I'm not excited by this turn from Robin. So he has basically ceded the on the play advantage of being a mana ahead at the cost of trying to get a Quirion Dryad on the table. So if David identifies this is the time to act, as the time that Robin could conceivably be low on interaction or just not be able to sequence his interaction fast enough, then that could turn out good. Or he could just keg a diamond, or he can tease out the Annul from this spot, which definitely has like a lot of questions. But yeah, that this Daze is pretty savage. So we'll see how much damage this Quirion Dryad can do before it gets blown up. But I guess the good news for Robin is that he can hold off his future mages. If Robin's contemplating a foil here, I think that would be a bit aggressive, considering it runs into another Daze.
Okay.
So this could be a sign of impatience from Robin if he runs out of foil, thinking that he absolutely needs to win the game with this Quirion Dryad, or else he's going to get run over by David's value game. And the fact that he's thinking so much either is a tremendous bluff, or
he's got Disenchant in his hand, and
yeah. I mean, just it's so hard to bluff like Magic Boomer's always, oh yeah, I just do that. I lean forward in my chair, lean back, I scratch my head, do all the things. I can't bluff for that. I can't. I've never intentionally bluffed. If you're sitting across from the table and if I do anything, just know that I'm not bluffing. Like I'm just real all the time. Like even on Magic Online where it's like easier to bluff, like I can't even bluff. I'll just pause. I'll be like, oh yeah, he's got the counterspell. He's thinking about the counterspell. If I had the disenchant, question becomes, would I disenchant now?
All right, so David is, I guess, since he didn't use the powder keg immediately, he had no intention of just using on the diamond. But I guess that makes sense since the Quirion Dryad's already in play. But like we said, I guess so. Robin's only way, or just the 2 copies of disenchant, and yeah, he does have it at the end of turn.
One of them. So I would have definitely main phased this disenchant. So Robin, of course, being a little cautious, worried that a Dreadnought's going to come down and he needs a disenchant for this turn. But
what he does by waiting is the powder keg has a counter on it.
Of course.
And so then he doesn't lose his Mox Diamond.
So he couldn't trade. He didn't end up trading disenchant plus Mox Diamond for like whatever. Could we see a double Daze from this spot? Nope. We're just going to get in a little bit of extra damage. I don't hate this spot from Robin as far as resources have been exchanged, but I do have to say, looking at the graveyards, Robin has kind of like cast a bunch more spells.
Yeah.
He's like a little bit more gassed, it feels like.
And I guess one thing to note is because this is a Quirion Dryad and not a Meddling Mage, I guess David probably doesn't have like a Dreadnought and a Vision Charm or Stifle in the hand, because that might be a fight that you're actually okay with losing, because if you're able to then summon the Dreadnought, obviously the 12/12 is going to outclass the Quirion Dryad for probably the remainder of the game. So
yeah, absolutely. In fact, this Dryad getting in for 7 damage and then dying to a powder keg that needed to be protected by Daze Counterspell is not a bad fate. But with the disenchant in hand, I find unless he top decked the disenchant, but with the disenchant in hand, spending Annul, which is basically one of the most powerful cards in this matchup, on a powder keg from that spot, knowing full well that it turned on Daze, is not my favorite outcome. But it looks like now is going to be the turn for David. So both players treating this like a game that's going to be decided within the first few turns. So Robin having invested Annul, Disenchant into this powder keg, David have invested Daze and Counterspell. Both players aren't going to be particularly flush, but both players have also gushed at this point once this resolves. So we could see the beginning of the battle. But if I had to guess, I would guess that Robin has nothing. And this Dreadnought is going to come down super free. I mean, Robin could have Plowshares. Obviously, he hasn't had a target for Plowshares in a bit.
Yeah, and given that like he had been, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but like using cards like Annul and Disenchant on a powder keg, you might be, if you didn't have an answer to a Dreadnought in your hand, you might be saying, okay, I'm willing to lose this Quirion Dryad to extend the game so that I'm able to answer a resolved Dreadnought.
Yeah.
All right, so Dreadnought is on the stack. We have not seen a Stifle or a Vision Charm yet, so.
Yeah, this is Robin considering. So Robin, if he has any copies of Swords to Plowshares in hand, it behooves him to let this Dreadnought resolve from the stack and force David to invest more mana into this turn because David's so short on mana. But we'll see how things go.
One thing that David is not short of is cards. He's still got 8 cards in his hand. Or
well, they're mostly islands. So.
Okay.
I think those are 2 islands that are kind of chilling.
No, I think he's just got 1 because he picked up the Gush and replayed 1. So the one that's tapped is Okay, so now he's foiled. So
He already did
I
it.
think he's
Yeah.
anything that's islands are unknown to Robin. So I think at this point,
Yeah. He started the turn with three lands, which is, I mean, that's not a lot of mana to work. So if Robin has a source of Plowshares here and potentially a Daze, then it's not the worst spot. If Robin has nothing, then of course the spot is not great. Again, I think fundamentally, especially Robin with his mana this developed, spending that Annul on the power keg, um, exposing it to Daze, I think it was a fine play for bloodthirst reasons. So if that Annul lands, he could be put in a position where he like completely completely blows out David. But anytime that I can successfully play around Daze, I can. And this is like double damage, right? So like the Annul plays like didn't play around the Daze, and he can't use the Annul in the future to play around Daze as the most efficient form of interaction for Dreadnought. So Robin clearly felt the pressure to make this Quirion Dryad a game-ending threat, and granted, it would be a game-ending threat from this board position without a powder cake in play. So Raczka just kind of had it all, and now Robin's going to be in somewhat of a scrambling position. He probably just like drew a Meddling Mage and he can't like figure out what to do. He's like, oh, right on time. Or he probably has had a Meddling Mage in hand, facing this power cake.
Yeah, that's true.
But with all these islands, Robin even had the option. I'm very interested if Robin would have missed his turn 3 land drop had he not cast Gush, because that was kind of like the first domino to fall.
Yeah. I had to imagine that he would have, because unless the only other way would be that you didn't have. No, I was to say because any land, because he had a Mox Diamond. I was to say if you knew that you're going to be able to cast the Quirion Dryad, but yeah, never mind.
So Robin could also be in a position where he's just choked on colored mana, but he unfortunately cheekily let on that he has a Meddling Mage in hand before attacking with the Quirion Dryad. So Raczka is suddenly hesitant to let this Dryad connect, knowing that a Meddling Mage could be following it up.
I guess so. Let's say that a Meddling Mage is in play. What is the scariest thing that Robin can name?
I would name Vision Charm.
Vision Charm? Okay, because I guess yes, because that is the best card at protecting your Dreadnought against what Robin has in terms of Swords, Plowshares, or Disenchant. Okay.
I mean, now that this attack got in, I would probably hope that I have Psychatog. Yeah, I'm not sure what Robin's plan here is. I guess it's definitely try to turn this this Quirion Dryad into an 8/8 and force this powder cake activation, and then figure it out from there.
And
But
so, David, I guess how easy is it to make counters at instant speed for Robin? So there's Opt. You imagine Fire Ice is out of the deck, but if Fire Ice was in the deck, I guess you could just then respond. I guess it's not like Powder Keg would need to. Never mind. I was thinking that maybe you had to commit to the Powder Keg before.
Yeah, no,
the attack.
of course,
That's not the case.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna Gush. Yeah. I also wonder if Gush is a good way to trigger Quirion Dryad at instant speed. Robin's wishing that he had some stifles of his own at this point in time.
Yeah, that would make this a much the Powder Keg's a much different card then.
Yeah. We have still 2 mana floating from Rob, and he tapped a land for that Portent. I hope Robin knows how much mana he has, because it could become crucial at some point. It could not. It could just not matter at all. Yeah, I mean, I like the procedure here from Robin, of course, forcing this powder keg blow up, but yeah, the tapping of the land is unfortunate. So Robin's just going to lose that 2 blue mana, but it looks like he's going to be dependent on what this Portent turns up for, or what this the top card of his deck is to interact with this Dreadnought. Yeah, once again, I think I think Robin felt a little bit too much pressure to end the game. Trading the powder keg for the Quirion Dryad isn't the end of the world. If you can continue to hang on to your resources, then that's great. But beyond that, I think that it's just developing your mana. Like this Gush, the Gush that started that turn was the most difficult. So we're gonna opt on your upkeep, or Raczka might have already drawn a card, but we're gonna plow. So if Raczka's play here is double Daze,
did Robin draw from the Portent as well?
Yeah, he drew the opt from the Portent.
Okay,
and he just like went digging for more stuff. So, we're gonna Gush on
on upkeep.
Oh, so both players really grasping. I mean,
that makes sense from David's. Like, if this, even if this like resolves, like then you're likely going to have the time to be able to rebuild your mana.
Yeah, this foil gets around Daze too, which is pretty sweet.
David does have a foil, so he's discarding. Was it 2 islands?
Yep.
Okay, and that's enough for Robin. And David goes up 2-1. So able to win a sideboard game. We'll see if Robin's able to go back to back, or if David's able to get one more game and able to take this match. I mean, where was our prediction at? Did it end up with that 44-1?
I am not the channel manager. So here we go. I see it. It's 44-6 now.
Okay. So the mono blue Stiflenought has more votes.
Yeah.
Oh, is that how it was when you talked about it?
Yeah. When I said it was 44-1, I was saying it's 44-1 in favor. So I was saying that the viewers don't believe.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that at the time we were talking about it.
So yeah, I think this is kind of an important. I mean, this is why these sort of like blue counterspell, counterspell and threat decks mirrors are like so interesting. So, if you've played Delver in Legacy, if you've played whatever the blue red deck in Modern these days is, and whatever form of counterspells paired with creature, these mirrors are always so intricate because fundamentally these decks always kind of have the same strategy into the format, right? Which is just like play a threat and protect it. But when you're playing an opponent who's also trying to play a threat and protect it, the dynamic is like completely shifted, where if you spend all your resources protecting your threats and then you gas out, you get punished by your opponent. Just then being like, okay, well, I'll just play my threat and then like race you. And then the threat sizing becomes like really important. So, it's all 3/3 flyers in Legacy, but I guess there's like cards like Murktide Regent. So you kind of have one guy, he's putting out 2/2s and 4/4s, and one guy who's putting out 12/12s. And I mean, a few things of note: we haven't seen any Mishra's Factories get in the way of David's mana base. We haven't seen them pitch to foil, stuff like that. But when you're playing these mirrors, generally speaking, I always find it perfectly fine to trade like Lightning Bolt for like Delver, right? So trading Powder Keg for Quirion Dryad is totally fine. Both players spent 2 mana, both players spent a card. Quirion Dryad's like going to get in for damage anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go back to 0, right? So Robin was trying to protect his lead, but the downside is that he had to invest extra cards into protecting his lead instead of investing cards into making sure that he doesn't die.
Sure.
So by his analysis, I think Robin felt like a long game wasn't going to favor him. And a long game definitely has downsides for Robin. His deck doesn't contain the card Impulse. So on average, he's going to see a lot fewer cards, and he's going to see a lot fewer copies of Gush, which is basically the most important card that matters. Both decks are pretty land light, But again, because David has slightly more control over his draws, David's also slightly more likely to make all of his land drops. Robin's deck contains Mox Diamond, which is not a card that does a thing. So there's definitely a lot of reasons to fear a long game from Robin's side. But the fundamental thing that Robin has to advantage is that if David wants to do anything, he's always committing at least 2 cards in the form of Dreadnought and Enabler. So he gets that value back on the back end typically.
I guess I agree with your assessment. I guess one of the things is maybe that Robin is undervaluing is just the presence of the 2 copies of Psychatog in his list. That like how
exactly, yeah,
like that card is like a Dreadnought in its own, assuming that the game gets to the mid or late game. Something that David needs to answer immediately, and like a Meddling Mage or a Quirion Dryad, it comes down and you need to invest more time or resources to make it like a threat in terms of the amount of damage it deals, while Psychatog, on the other hand, just is likely to be lethal if you get to that point in the game.
Exactly. That's a very important observation, right? Because that Quirion Dryad could have gotten in, just a little bit of damage before dying to the power keg, and Robin letting it die to the power keg. But that little bit of damage would have been probably just enough to push Psychatog into lethal territory if and when he draws it. So here we might see a flip in the paradigm. So now with the presence of this Mishra's Factory, Robin might not be in a position to sit back and do nothing. So I'm excited to see if David smells blood with this Mishra's Factory, but I have a feeling that we're going to go land go for as long as we can, and then as soon as we can't make a land drop, we're going to cast Gush.
So one thing that's interesting, like chip damage is important against some decks, but like because David plays Dreadnoughts and they deal damages in chunks of 12. I mean, I guess maybe if you hit it 4 times that you buy a turn. But I mean, in general, it just doesn't seem like the chip damage is that effective. Is David like interested in like saying like, okay, as long as you're not presenting white mana, I'm going to be dealing you 2 damage and spending my mana, which is a cost because like it's harder to fight anything that Robin does. Is that something you think David's interested in doing?
I think David dealing 8 damage is going to be pretty important, right? Because it takes him out of those mate and 2 situations where it's no longer mate and 2 no longer matters. The counter swing is the only thing that matters. In fact, there is no counter swing. So it relieves a substantial amount of pressure. But I am hating this turn. So Robin, unless he has double foil in hand, he's just going all in on this Meddling Mage here. So Robin's about to fetch a plains and throw down a Meddling Mage with 1 blue mana floating, which is just enough to foil pay for Daze. But yeah, I really, really don't like casting Gush on turn 3.
Mm-hmm.
I just
like, yeah, even if he resolves his spell, which is a very good spell, but then like he just doesn't have any resources for the next few turns to do anything. I guess the one upside is David's deck, like assuming a Meddling Mage resolves, has a hard time punishing like Robin not having any mana.
I also want to point out something insane, which is that David is telegraphing the presence of Brain Freeze with his Storm Tracker here. So yeah, he doesn't need any more. You don't have mana to cast it, but maybe Robin's gonna bust out and empty the Warrens, and we can disqualify him from the tournament.
An Astral Steel.
So if okay, Robin has foil in his hand, but foil in his hand from this position gets dazed once more if the counterplay from David is Powder Keg. So then his hand has to be foil and disenchant, but it just get dazed. Like Daze is so important here. Like I would just never willfully plan any of my fundamental turns without having 1 mana left over.
Sure.
This is what was driving me crazy. Like this is why it's so painful to gush early, because you just like don't put yourself in a position to be able to pay for Daze when it matters. And like Daze is one of the only cards that you can get for free from your opponent just by playing Lance or like just by doing nothing, right? So you zero for your opponent, you 0 for one of your opponent's dazes just by making your land drops. So yeah, Robin's gonna opt here, but just so much investment. Like, you know, maybe if he had a Mox so that he could like pay for Daze around the foil. But you know, the other crazier thing is that this Meddling Mage, especially okay, if Robin discards the hand size, I'm going to lose my mind. But oh no, this is not good. But Robin can't even attack with his Meddling Mage because of the presence of 3/3 Mishra's Factory. So what are we going to do? We're just going to wait until David can play Powder Keg with like multiple backup, completely gas out Robin, and then play Dreadnought after Robin's gassed out anyways, having fought over this Powder Keg. Like, I don't know. It just seems super loose. Now, that said, if these two copies of Powder Keg are quite far down in David's deck, you know, and if David has to tap out on his main phase to make land drops with Impulse, and this Meddling Mage can get into for chip damage, Robin's not going to be in the absolute worst spot. But
is that what that Impulse was?
Yep.
An attempt to find land, you think?
Main phase to find land, absolutely.
All right.
Because then you would just never cast on your main phase, right? Because you would want to leave the factory up.
Yeah.
Of course, if Robin is planning to use all of his extra copies of Swords of Plowshares on Mishra's Factory blocks, then that's totally fine as well. But if you lose the counter roar on that one, you're gonna lose double because your mage is also gonna hit the yard. I concur with Alvaro Glindo, noted master of the mono blue archetype. But if you're going to play Powder Kegs, you sure as hell want to play 4 copies. But now with a second copy of Mishra's Factory, David can even be the beatdown and just like race this Meddling Mage with one factory hanging back at each turn. So let's go ahead and see what happens from here. But yeah, like I pointed out, if David goes for animating factories with a bunch of mana up, compelling Robin to Swords of Plowshares, a fight over the Swords of Plowshares could result in Robin losing his Meddling Mage.
So whose life total is more important here? Because David, obviously, you get him down to 12, then that's a turn with the Dreadnought. But if you're opening yourself up to like taking chip damage is better for Robin because his deck doesn't deal. I mean, it can because of Psychatog, but like the chip damage, I would say on average is better for Robin.
Yeah, I mean the calculus is like if I resolve the same thing. It's the mate and 2 situation. Right? If I resolve a Dreadnought, like can I even afford to attack with it? And it is important to note the presence of Mishra's Factory does allow you to make attacks with Dreadnought and still have some defense on the back end. So, I think the answer to your question is that Robin getting in little points of damage matters to his overall clock, but it matters a lot less in the sense that there's no break point between 20 and 12. So that 8 damage break point does make a big difference. And once again, I mean, this could just be a game where Robin is mana screwed, but he hand sized a Flooded Strand. So, you know, and he hasn't really cast any more cantrips. So I sort of just like don't know what's going on exactly with Robin's hand, but the fact that he isn't slamming a land, yeah, this is not good.
Yeah, I would say like so discarding the Flooded Strand and then now discarding the hand size, like I don't know. You really want to hit your land drops in these situations to avoid discarding spells later, I guess. Or being able to play multiple spells in one turn.
You have to keep a balance, right?
Yeah.
You have to imagine Robin's hand is all disenchants. You know, is all good premium interaction. But yeah, the deck certainly isn't serving him. If he was short his 3rd land drop on the Gush turn, and he was focused on what he was going to do around the Gush, you know, that's whatnot. But again, he hasn't really been able to perform any card selection to influence his draws. He doesn't even have a source of green or black mana to cast Quirion Dryad or Psychatog should they show up. So I don't love Robin's spot, especially as David has officially entered into the hard cast Gush zone. But you know, with David also hand sizing his Dazes, you know, you could maybe say that the players are at parity. I mean, if I'm David, I'm sending in some Mishra's Factory starting immediately, though.
One thing that might come up, so Vision Charm has the ability to phase out any artifact, not just artifact creatures. So if it gets to the point where Robin is trying to disenchant a powder keg and David has a Vision Charm, not only would it save it from a disenchant, but it would keep any counters that it would have, so that when it comes back, that you don't have to like reset those counters.
Yeah, absolutely. But Robin could at least time it so that he does it with the second. Just it doesn't matter either way.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to summarize is like that Robin needs to prioritize fighting powder keg on the stack because he can't reliably destroy it because of Vision Charm.
Yeah, just like he plans on fighting Dreadnought on the stack similarly. Yeah. Good point, and we'll see if Robin spots the interaction. So we are going to.
Okay, I would say if you name powder keg there,
then it's nearly a lock. But Robin does not have the resources to fight this, unless, of course, he's all resources. But I can't imagine that this is a fight that Robin wants to try to pick and win. He's just counting on these 2 copies of powder keg being quite far down in the deck. And if this is a Daze, then okay, this is sweet. Now, I mean, this is just a fine exchange. I'm down to just like pass and be cool.
Chad had mentioned, do we know if David brought in the Brain Freeze? We don't know for sure.
We don't have it on information, but he did bring out the Storm counter.
But in a spot that you definitely like wouldn't use it, so maybe
Brain Freeze.
Maybe that was a bluff. I don't know, but we have not seen Brain Freeze.
If David subscribes to the Lanny Huang school of having never bluffed in his life, then perhaps. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those brain freezes where you can just check the ledger and you can just be like, let's just see how many spells we played. Yeah, so David got in for 2. And finally, we have a green/black source for Robin. We've already hand-sized a Dryad. And yeah, I mean, this is the rock, right? He had a wrong half problem. His cantrips were in a weird spot. His mana was in a weird spot. But Robin has fully bounced back. So this Dryad is a must counter threat. David's going to be forced to invest resources into fighting over this Dryad because it's existential. If it's large enough to brawl with Mishra's Factories, it's going to be a thing. Yeah, we're going to Flash of Insight to draw a card. Robin hand-sizing foil instead of Daze also indicates to me that Robin doesn't have Daze in his hand.
All right, so the Quirion Dryad does come down. I mean, if David has confidence that he's going to resolve a powder keg, then maybe this is not the worst spot. But
this is a great spot to resolve powder keg, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could see, the powder keg fight just becomes a proxy for the Dreadnought fight. Like I said, you can just jam powder keg. It can be Annul, Counterspell, untap, disenchant, Vision Charm, and then we just play the whole dance.
Well, I mean, with the Meddling Mage in play, it's likely the fight that David has to take because
assuming I mean, he can't take any other fight.
Yeah. I mean, well, a Brain Freeze fight, like it might come up. Like in theory, he could produce enough spells. I mean, I don't know what the card count out is, but
I mean, I would play 1 Brain Freeze. If he kept the Flash of Insights in, he can just like be like, okay, let's just do the dance.
And try and pivot to that win condition.
Flash and go grab the Brain Freeze. Robin, of course, showcasing how small a Quirion Dryad can be. Aside from like that Portent that he cast on turn 1 and like an opt he capped on his Gush turn, things are looking weird. This Vision Charm discard really needs to. Okay, so one of the. Okay, let's just make a read, right? It's hard to read. What does Raczka's hand have to be that he discarded the Vision Charm? Like that just seems crazy to me. Like that card is so good in the matchup. It's one of the most premium spells that you can have. It's the card that I would have named with my 3rd copy of Meddling Mage or whatever.
Yeah, it's certainly better than Stifle. Like in every case, right? Is there a situation where Stifle is better? I guess in theory you can get a Flooded Strand with Stifle where you can't with Vision Charm, but I don't think we're at the point of the game where that matters.
Yeah, I just don't know what Raczka's hand is from hand sizing that Vision Charm because
Well, he put it to good use by flashing back the Flash of Insight.
okay, where did it? I guess the Exile's on top. Well, not if he's going to hand size this turn because he's going to start this turn with 9 cards in hand. Okay, so all the flashes came in. So Raczka came prepared for a grindy game.
Chat to say I don't think you bring in Brain Freeze against the Psychatog deck. I mean, I think you usually only cast Brain Freeze when it's lethal, so I don't know if Psychatog really changes that calculus.
Yeah, I agree. I would try to cast Brain Freeze when it's going to win me the game. Or you could just mill the 2 Psychatogs, you know.
I mean, I've seen Brain Freeze brought in against Stiflenought lists, which to me also it seems in some ways wild because you're like, oh, they have Stifle to get rid of the trigger.
Right. We have Vision Charm targeting self to gas up our Flash of Insight, and that Vision Charm turned over a Powder Keg. Okay. So we're down to 1 copy of Powder Keg in the remaining 60. I'm going to love seeing that from Robin's side.
Is it possible that David like sees a plan of making a big storm count where he can, because if that were the case, that he'd be milling Robin.
He would be milling Robin. He's trying to gas up his next copy of Flash of Insight quicker.
Okay.
Which again, preferable to hand sizing the Vision Charm, but even more preferable to hand sizing the Vision Charm the turn before is using it targeting Robin, which is an interaction that I always forget, by the way. So if you're in chat and you're just like, wow, that's genius. Instead of hand sizing Vision Charm, you can cast it on your opponent. I never do that. I just like never remember. I'm just like, I was like, this card only phases out Dreadnoughts. Discard. Like, that's just me. Yeah, hand sizing Dreadnought makes a lot of sense because he only needs 1 to win. So every copy beyond the first is going to feel redundant because I'm assuming it's only going to come down when it matters.
All right.
And finally,
I was saying, like, I don't know how many turns went by where that Quirion Dryad just stayed a 1/1, but now finding a Portent might chain together other cantrips. So
yeah, I'm pretty down for some gushes, but notably, Raczka can put 6 toughness in front of that Quirion Dryad. So we might see an interesting sub game created by these Mishra's factories, which is very exciting to me because this literally would just be a done deal if Robin had been attacking this entire time. So the Rochester Spice Tech is working. Huge props. You love to see it, etc., etc. I mean, it's just buying him it's buying David infinite time.
That's true. Yes.
I mean, maybe I would run an Ivory Tower. Can you imagine Ivory Tower and Mishra's Factory blocking on the ground? You're just a mono blue control deck. Just get some quicksand in there so the Meddling Mage never attacks.
What about a Library of Lang?
Yeah, sure. Library of Lang Ivory Tower. I'm down. I'll discard stuff to the top of my deck.
Checking out the graveyard. Or those the exile. So
the exile. There's 2 counterspells in exile. So Robin is trying to figure out how many foils and counterspells David has access to.
It was 2 counterspells were exiled?
Yep, 2 counterspells were exiled.
Have any foils been revealed?
Negative. So I wanted to circle back on the topic of Brain Freeze. Raczka not proactively Vision Charming could be the biggest bluff of all time. Basically saying that I don't have Brain Freeze, like a double bluff, right? First, he bluffed the Brain Freeze by pulling out the Storm counter. Then he bluffed not having the Brain Freeze by Vision Charming, by hand sizing Vision Charm instead of casting it, and then the following Vision Charm just casting it on itself. So then Robin's thinking, well, what's this guy doing? He's like, it's got to be a fake bluff, right? There's no way he has Brain Freeze. And then he didn't Vision Charm. So Robin's like, even more so, it's like, okay, well, it probably doesn't have Brain Freeze, but turns are going to pass. And I think it's quite possible that we end up seeing that Raczka does in fact have Brain Freeze, and he's just like waiting till Robin has like 20 cards in library to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I have no gauge in how many cards left are in Robin's deck.
There can't be many. He's cast a Gush, he's cast a Portent, and 100 turns have passed. If I had to estimate, I would say that there are around 30. The Meddling Mage is naming Dreadnought. Robin is asking how many cards are in David's deck. Not sure if that matters. Or no, I mean, I don't know. David's like fanning out his deck. It's like, how much you got? He's like, I don't know. I've got a lot. What's it to you? You don't have brain freeze. I mean, if you're David, do you like brain freeze yourself and then you cast recall?
Recall's banned. I'm not even joking. Did you know that?
I didn't know it was pre-modern legal. I didn't know it got printed in.
I think it's in Chronicles.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Wait, why doesn't it come up? Oh, maybe look at the wrong set.
It's coming up, man.
Yeah.
It's coming up as legal.
Is it?
Yeah, it's coming up as legal to me. There's like no reason this card would be not.
Yeah, legal. For some reason I thought the card was banned.
There's like I can't imagine how you would break this card.
There's probably people who have played this card too. So
yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, Phil Wynn has, without a doubt. I mean, Rich Shea would have brain freezed the F out of me this match. Like Rich Shea would have just like not had Dreadnoughts in his deck.
Wait,
like,
recall was printed in 6th edition? I didn't realize it was. Oh man, yeah. Okay, all right. I didn't realize that.
I mean, I love that like regrowth was like I lived during the time where I was like checking out the legacy ban list or whatever, or like the vintage ban list. And I'm like, oh, regrowth. It's a very powerful card. I'm like, it's just banned. Just like this is one of the most powerful cards ever printed. Just like a emblematic of how cards power level are determined by the cards surrounding it. Just like, they're just like printed into modern. They're just like yeah, this card is literally just bad. It's like modern unplayable.
Yeah. The game is very different than it was in 1993.
I mean, that's true for sure. And, you know, it still deserves the restriction in vintage, so.
All right, another Meddling Mage. If this resolves...
Oh, never mind. It got unrestricted in vintage. I had no idea. I mean, this Meddling Mage resolving is just funny because I would just name... I mean, I don't know. I would probably name Powder Keg, but there's only one copy of Powder Keg left. So now the copy of Reality Ripple is going to come into play.
Okay. Is that a card you think that... I mean, just David just priced into keeping that in his deck?
Yeah. Okay. You need if it's a game that's completely decided by Meddling Mage, then like whatever. This Counterspell... What's in Raczka's hand?
Is there any chance that you would name Brain Freeze instead of Powder Keg? Because in theory, if it's in the deck, like Robbins has probably have a better time of fighting a Powder Keg than he would a Brain Freeze.
I mean, that's true. He can't fight against a Brain Freeze. I guess we should ask him what it's naming once it resolves. Oh, we're gushing still, so this Meddling Mage is on the stack. Okay, so at this point, this commentator has deduced that Raczka's library does not, in fact, contain the card Brain Freeze. I'm just going to put my foot down. That's the read. Like, the fighting here is just too intense over this Meddling Mage. I mean, I could be wrong. But I certainly don't think that, you know, because once again, I wanted to, you know, point out these factories holding off the offense from this battlefield right now, and I hope this Quirion Dryad continues ticking up. This battle being fought over Meddling Mage right now, signifies that both players seem to care. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Raczka thinks that Robin's going to name Brain Freeze, but yeah, no. One thing that I want to make absolutely clear is that I would definitely bring in Brain Freeze because I think it's a good answer to Meddling Mage. And in fact, after Raczka has like observed how long this game has the potential to go.
Sure.
So okay, let's presume for a second that we are the greatest strategist in pre-modern, Richard Shea, and we just like analyze both these deck lists and analyze both this game can go. So Rich Shea famously was able to identify that the replenish deck only has 8 copies of cards that do anything to win the game, right? So if you can take Meddling Mage out of the picture, thanks to your copies of Mishra's Factory, the Gro-A-Tog deck only has 6 cards to win the game, which is Quirion Dryads and Psychatogs. So if you wanted to make the fight about just Quirion Dryads and Psychatogs, then you could always end the game with like a combination of Vision Charms and Brain Freezes. And in fact, I think that would be like the optimal strategy, because it's very hard to fight over 4 copies of Meddling Mage every single time it comes down and fight over Dryads and Psychatogs. But if you board out some number of Dreadnoughts and Dreadnought becomes just like, oh, well, maybe I'll just jam it on turn 2, but after that I'm just going to be pitching it to foil, and you just like don't have to worry about Meddling Mage, then it becomes a bigger thing. But that said, given that that's optimal, then Robin would have to read just like, okay, well, I'll just name Brain Feast for my next Meddling Mage.
Yeah, I have to imagine with Vision Charm getting discarded to foil that Brain Freeze is not in this game's future.
I can't believe that this Quirion Dryad, after all that, is just a 5/5. There just is no way. Like, what is...
Well, it was
this card is so bad.
It was Ponder, Meddling Mage, Counterspell, foil.
Something like that. Like, why do I even play this stupid deck? It's like I just like had a giant counter war.
It's big enough to attack.
I mean, it literally was barely large enough to attack. It was 5/5 over 4/4 in blocking. Raczka's gonna untap and have 6/6 in blocking this turn. Okay, now this Flash of Insight is undoubtedly going to find whatever it is Raczka's looking for. It should be a Brain Freeze, but unfortunately it's nothing, except for just a lowly Powder Keg.
Gotta be Powder Keg, yeah.
But now this Powder Keg doesn't have enough time because Raczka's Gush so low that he has to tap mana for the Powder Keg. He can't leave mana for double Mishra's activation. So this Quirion Dryad's going to hit and get in.
Well, he doesn't need a double activate. He can chump block.
Well, yeah, he can chump block, but that's not a great spot. And there's still one more Meddling Mage left in Robin's deck. So great match. Love to see these blue mirrors. I also gotta give Robin a hard time. He was like, he like had things to say about my 2-hour match against Rich Shea playing Replenish against Blue White Dreadnought. And obviously this is a best of 5, but we're about to hit the 2-hour mark here in game 4.
I would say I have my stream uptime is an hour 43, and we at least had 10 minutes of a pregame. So
yeah. I'm not saying we're about to hit, Lanny versus Rich numbers. And I spent an enormous amount of time in the tank where these guys are just passing and discarding in hand size. But
we're getting shamed by chat. We're getting shamed by chat for saying Ponder instead of Portent.
Okay, listen.
I think it was me. I don't even think it was
They're
you.
just the same freaking card.
Yeah.
It was you, but I've got you back. It's just, come on. Come on. Like, there are so few pre-modern players who've like never played a match of Legacy anyways. And in fact, most pre-modern players have played more matches of Legacy in their life than pre-modern. I played all my matches of Legacy in 2006 through 2008. And that 2-year time probably still outpaces all of the games I played in pre-modern. Now, that said, 2008 was before Ponder got friggin' printed. So we were still playing Portent and Legacy at the time.
What I think is cool is how Legacy got to the point where Portent was still valued. I mean, it wasn't valued more than Ponder in the Miracles deck, but it had added value that you could draw the card to Miracle on your opponent's turn. So the slow trip was actually a benefit. So I always think it's like when you're like, oh, this card is just worse. It's there's weird corner cases all over.
Are you able to decipher the meaning of what was just dropped in chat. Oh, deck size. So Robin's deck size is 31 and David's deck size is 24. So I don't know if 10 spells got cast that turn, but Robin both are very aware of the presence of Brain Freeze, it seems, and Robin may very well be naming Brain Freeze with the second copy of Meddling Mage. Although I would
Did the players note the deck sizes?
Yep.
Okay.
We just got the message in chat.
Okay.
And there is the Powder Keg with seemingly no backup, but once again, it's coming an extremely limited resource time for Raczka.
Mm-hmm.
And this Annul is going to get dazed. It's going to get counterspelled. That's going to get double dazed. Or it could just get dazed foiled. Or the keg's going to get disenchanted. I'll stop trying to like predict what's going to happen. I'm just like seeing like, I'm just like, normally at this stage of the game, my hand is like all daze. And I'm just like waiting to just like double daze. Yeah, notably, you can't annul a Brain Freeze. So this Powder Keg is super slow. Raczka is staring down the barrel of 8 damage, and he's at 13. So those Mishras are going to be forced to chump. And yeah, I guess Robin's going to draw his Mox Diamonds eventually and run out of gas. Like it just comes down to if Robin finds another Gush pretty soon. And every single copy of Counterspell is gone. And we're also missing most foils. There is one Disenchant remaining on... Wait, no. Was that Disenchant last game?
Yes, I do believe so.
Yeah, so Robin still has access to up to two Disenchant.
Yeah,
I know for a fact that Robin didn't board out diamonds. It's just too weird to try to cast your spells with only 4 copies of City of Brass. You're just like cast Portent. You're like C3 lands, but one of them is City of Brass. You're like, guess I have to keep this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Diamond's great in the matchup, but I like Diamond better than Fire Ice. You know. Oh, so flippant. He's just like, it's just like, I'll disenchant.
I got this. I had this for a while.
Get this off the table.
I was waiting for it. And there's no blue mana to Vision Charm.
Notably,
I would say I think there's only one Vision Charm left.
Yeah, David's just sort of shuffling his cards around. He's like, these don't do anything.
Well, there's
this
a foil.
one does actually, but it doesn't matter. This foil's like too late. Like Robin just wants the +1/+1 counter. Like
Sure.
he's like, I'll take a couple more if you got them. I mean, with David down to 4, it's not an existential threat, but it's certainly going to force Mishra's Factory chump block here, and then he's going to fight over Plowshares. I think one Misdirection is at least in the yard. I don't know how many copies could have come in. 2 copies potentially in.
So we should talk about Misdirection a little bit more. It's an interesting tension that like I feel like David could more aggressively activate and block with his Mishra's Factories because of the presence of Misdirection. If Robin were to swords it and like as a Meddling Mage in play, that's a good way to like swing things around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not something that I necessarily considered. So.
I had not either. And I wonder if Robin has considered this too. So now that we're seeing this matchup play out, oh, here's a Psychatog. That's sweet. That is going to produce a tremendous... Oh my... Is this really a Daze? He bluffed the Daze. He just like, okay, whatever. David's at 3 life. He's like, if you got the Daze, just daze me, bro. Yeah, so this Psychatog is definitely in 13-13 territory, and we're forced to double chump next turn, so that's pretty sick. Although a Reality Ripple could make a difference. Good point, Mike Arnold.
So Swords of Plowshares here would be enough as well, right?
That's correct, but it would, as you astutely pointed out, turn on.
Yeah, Misdirection. Yeah,
Misdirection. But actually,
how many cards does David have?
Everything is enough here. So No, Robin, no. No, Robin, no! No, Robin, you played into it! No, Robin! How could that? I'm the Breaking Bad meme. Jesse! He
So
should have just moved to. He just
you get the Psychatog.
put David on no outs. Put David on literally no outs if he just goes like, okay, block something.
And now we can get to the point where we can live through the turn and have the powder keg tick up to 2.
Well, yeah. So David had David was on Reality Ripple as an out.
Okay.
So Plow turned off Reality Ripple. And Robin is too tired. He's like literally thinking to himself. He's just like, oh my God, when is this match over? So unfortunately, I think Robin is not going to have the mental reserves ready for game 5. So the fatigue, I think, is just like completely just like set onto him. And we're just going to Plowshares the factory again. He's like, do you have another misdirection? Okay, thank God. All right, I'm gonna use the bathroom really quick.
All right, that sounds good.
Refill my water.
So we are headed to a game number 5. We're gonna get the full amount of magic, as it's been pretty frequent that we've had for this top 8. So I'm gonna go back to the decks, at least for David, and we can kind of maybe try and piece together what he sideboarded. So we have seen Misdirections. We've seen the Flash of Insights, the Powder Kegs. We have not seen Brain Freeze. And I don't think we saw any copies of Annul out of David. I think those were just in Robin's list. So we didn't see Stifle, I don't believe, and I don't know if we saw a Dreadnought. So the thing is that like there's I try to consider if there's a possibility that David is just going like, oh, okay, so a Dreadnought did get discarded. Okay, I would say like that David went like full transformation and just like going into a way where he's just planning on winning with Brain Freeze. But I guess the one thing that was, I'm under the impression that he didn't have Brain Freeze in because he had dug through his deck so much with those Flash of Insights and wasn't able to present it. I don't know with the library count if there was ever an opportune time, but I guess that counterfight when there was a bunch of spells probably would have been the spot. But I wonder if he's revisiting that option given the way that last game went. Something that would definitely be something that would be, I think, of value to have one Brain Freeze in your deck. All right, Lanny has returned.
Oh boy. Can you imagine the second misdirection? It's like
I don't even know if David had enough cards in his hand for that.
I think he had 2 cards left.
Okay, he did. All right.
He hand-sized a misdirection earlier in the game.
Okay.
I like this legal pad that's been cut in half on David's side. I'm gonna do that. I'm probably going to use a more clean cut, but
they make smaller notepads. I don't think it's.
Do they make smaller notepads that are 11 inches tall?
I don't know. Okay, so I don't know if like one's been ripped off and is like slightly down. I don't know why you would do that, but maybe you're right.
This is clearly a legal pad that's been like ripped in half by hand, like or by like safety scissors.
I would be so impressed if David could rip a legal pad in half with his hands.
No, but I mean, clearly the scissors he used were not very sharp and were quite small. So, but it's definitely not like, I mean, this is just like half a yellow pad. That's like 2 life. I love it. And like a whole BO5 BO5 of notes. I mean, he's using the dice for life, but a whole BO5 of life could conceivably fit on that too.
Well, he writes also horizontally with the life totals, which I think is the best way to do it, because whenever I do it vertical, I take up way more space. But also, when we're talking about life totals, so you know how they hand out like those little notepads, and like it's like there's like 2 columns that everyone uses. I use 1 column for
Per 2
both
games.
for
Yeah,
both
yeah,
players. So like I never like go through like totals. Also, I have like a weird thing, like I'm very reluctant to like throw out a life pad. There would be times I'll be like, I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, I remember this game. Like, cause I'll sometimes take notes. I'll put like DN for like Dreadnought or something. Like I've seen certain cards that I can kind of like re-envision what happened in a game just based on the little notes that I had. So
Yeah, I don't envy your kids emptying out your stuff when you've passed on this earth, and they're just like, "What's this box full of?" It's just like literal garbage.
or some like half
Dad,
measure pre-modern brew where I'm like, oh, I don't want to throw this out. I've never actually tried this, but I don't want to undo the work that I did. So
oh, like in a deck box or like writing
no, it's like it's usually on like a note card.
a note card. Yeah,
I've got one that's like upstairs on my work deck, and it's like a mono blue Future Sight Sapphire Medallion control / combo deck.
So my creative process thrives on just deleting decks from my file.
Okay.
So if I have a deck, for instance, I want to play a deck that like has like a mild, like careful study on Earth, like reanimator package. I drew it up the whole 75. And then I just like deleted it. So that like if I draw it up again, I have to like think and remember all the cards that I put in it and like whatever. But we got action anyways. But yeah,
Okay.
so it's just just like throw those decks out and then just think about them again from scratch. It might
Interesting.
your perspective.
I thought you were almost
So
going to say the opposite, that you were going to pull up the list and then delete like certain aspects and build from there. But no, you just
I just full delete and just start from scratch again. Like if I put 0 reps in, I'll just like start the idea over. But if I'm David, I'm so excited to stifle these Flooded Strands. And if I'm Robin, I'm so excited to not crack these Flooded Strands until David's tapped out.
My kid tried to throw a paper airplane, and I'm looking to see.
Oh, I saw it.
Oh, I did not. But
props to
Avery.
Props to the child. To Aves BH10. Your kid has a great sense of humor.
She is definitely the goofy aspect of. I think she got that for me. I don't think my wife is very goofy, so.
What?
I'm more playful.
Hard to believe she puts up with you then.
Yeah. She's very patient, I will say.
Avery, on the other hand, is waiting for whatever. So this was
she wants to go play volleyball. That's the thing. So
just tell her to drive herself.
She's not quite there. She's in 7th grade, so
I'm there's no time like the present. All right, so this this fetch land is gonna get a plains. We're gonna jam a Meddling Mage here into 2 open islands and Daze back. I don't know. I think Robin has at least found out that he can win a game that goes long. So that should come as some great comfort to him, that his deck has the resources to carry a game that lasts longer. We'll see if he makes any other adjustment.
If David had 1 copy of Brain Freeze in the deck last game, which I don't think he did. If he did, do you think he would have been able to win that game?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, he would have won that game the turn that, he could have navigated in a way to play around that Brain Freeze such that like the turn that big things were happening, he could cast Brain Freeze. This happened with me and Will in the PSS. Like Will didn't have like Brain Freeze in game 2. He lost game 2 and then he brought it in for game 3. And he just used it to win game 3. Brain Freeze won so many games in the PSS.
That's because Rich is in the PSS.
Yeah. Oh. Flash of Insight for 1. If I had a foil in my hand, I probably would have cast foil. Did we literally get David with his pants down on turn 3 with just this naked Meddling Mage? I mean, I guess he has both powder kegs in hand. I mean, Robin has to be feeling ecstatic here.
What cards does he have in his? If no counterspell, no foil, or not willing to commit a foil, but that seems unlikely. I guess you could not have an island, but
yeah, maybe he flashed for the island, or like I said, he has both powder kegs. So once again, I implore Robin to just take this trade. I would invest Disenchant though, but I think taking the trade is fine. I also implore Robin not to cast Gush. I'm sending my brainwaves to both players, just to be like, cast Gush for 5 mana. Like, I want to see somebody cast Gush for 5 mana. So this is something that I feel like I do differently. Like, I'm not saying like I'm special. I'm just saying that I cast Gush for 5 mana a lot more than I see other players cast Gush for 5 mana. And
Sure.
one of us has to be wrong, right?
Mhm.
So I keep on wondering if I'm the wrong one. Oh, David is not taking the bait of blocking with his Mistress Factory. I wanted to point out another interesting bit of tension is that Robin could always wait on the plow for David to do a Mistress Factory activation and then tap, and then David can also just pass priority and always pass priority
Mhm.
back, like take the trade with Factory, which I would do every time.
Little cat and mouse game there, yeah.
Yeah, a little priority gambit. Robin, of course, lives without fear here. I mean, if I'm David, I'm pretty tempted. Like, I hate this Swords to Plowshares exchange for Robin. Like, Plow is not a premium spell to fight over Dreadnought with, but it still costs 1 mana, which is very important, and it still helps Robin break some of this back and forth. So
Yeah, I mean, so from David's position, this does not seem like a bad exchange.
I mean, it's a great exchange if he can keep his Powder Keg in play. But yeah, Robin is hand sizing Daze, and he took a mulligan this game, I think. So don't like it. Yeah, Robin's just like not in a good spot at all. And David could always just not pop this keg. He can block, he can take 2, he can wait till Robin has a plow on the factory.
All right, so now David is going to, I guess, so
Robin might just be flush in Plowshares and not enough white mana Vision Charm, I'm so sure. Okay. Trading Plow for Vision Charm is like totally fine, but it is, whatever.
I mean, it's bound to happen one way or another, probably, right?
Yeah, I just am like, both of us are committing. Like, I'm like, okay.
I do like this
I feel
patience here,
like
though.
I feel like these spells are good to have in your hand.
Yeah,
Now, Robin, of course, has 9 cards in hand, so it's like, or 8 cards in hand or whatever, so it's like a little different. But like these spells are good for casting on things that matter, right? Like,
I do want to highlight, like, with David not using this powder keg yet, and this, as long as you're able to keep this Mistress Factory in play, because he knows Robin has no way to protect the Meddling Mage. Like, there's no Stifle, there's no
exactly.
way to flicker his Meddling Mage. So whenever David wants, he's able to remove this Meddling Mage. But because he has Mistress Factory, it's such a non-committal way for him to just hold off the Meddling Mage in play, and now Robin can no longer develop additional Meddling Mages or Quirion Dryads, and he could just wait and wait and wait and set up whether it's going to be a Dreadnought turn or a Brain Freeze turn. I love this sequencing from David.
I completely agree. As you might recall, I am a big fan of using Pernicious Deed at the last possible moment, and it's for this reason exactly. However, I wouldn't use a Vision Charm. I guess I don't know. Like, so Robin, if he has multiple copies of Plowshares, I think it's like totally fine, because he's basically saying that he's trying to trade the Plowshares for the Powder Keg, not the Mistress Factory. And David similarly might be flesh in Vision Charm, so he's like happy to just like throw these Vision Charms away. So it's better for David, like, once the Plowshares is on the stack, it's better for David to use Vision Charm, right? So like, I've come around to what you've put forth, especially because David here hasn't like presented a second Mistress Factory. Because as we can see how it's shaking out, it's ended up buying David a lot of time without any progress on the board on Robin's part. So
Chat has asked, does Factory phase in as a land or as a creature? It was phased out of play when the end of turn effects wore off. Well, it doesn't phase until your next upkeep, right? But I think it comes into play as a land. I'm not 100% sure, though.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. All right, so we're going to play 3 casting costs, whatever. And here we go. We're going to hardcast a foil. So, yeah, the point where David is able to hardcast his resources without committing extra cards to them is going to be great. And, like I said, I'm just waiting for a hardcast Gush.
Yeah, I mean, like, this definitely seems like a spot where David can just be a control deck with a finish of Brain Freeze. And with this many lands in play, it's really easy for him to exchange 1 for 1 and never have to, like, alternate cost foil or whatnot. And then he still does have the option. I mean, like, if he has cards like Misdirection, that he would be able to do it if he did ever tap low.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this Gush is a little bit premature from Robin once again, because this Psychatog doesn't look to me like it's lethal, and it especially would be a bad lethal if it resulted in him discarding any cards to it. But it's possible, like you said, that if Raczka is in the mode where he's a Brain Freeze deck, then it might totally be the time to put on pressure, even if it's conceivably just 1 damage a turn.
Yeah.
I mean, 14 is not a high life total in the face of Psychatog for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
And Robin still needs to discard a second card to this foil. It's an opt. Sweet rules clarification. It indeed does not come back as a creature. So with this foil on Psychatog on the stack, we're going to impulse, notably keeping our factory up for potential blocking.
I guess that also cuts him off of Counterspell, though.
Counterspell. Yeah. That is something that I wanted to note. So even if he pulls Counterspell off the top, he's not that interested in casting it.
I'm not sure. I mean, Psychatog is a card you want to answer, isn't it?
If the next turn is going to see a Dreadnought get put into play and the Psychatog can't get up to 12, or David has plenty of Vision Charm coverage, then it could end up not mattering.
Is there any possibility that David is going to tick up the Powder Keg to 3 and kill the Psychatog?
Yes. If David is going to commit to the Brain Freeze plan, then that's totally fine. I see a Daze being put in the graveyard. Oh, I see a double Daze being cast. Okay. So double Daze is cast. We're just going to pick up a couple islands, of which we have plenty, and put this Psychatog into the graveyard. After and the Robin's going to be tapped out, opening up a turn where Raczka can conceivably, with just 2 cards in hand, untap, keg, and make a Phyrexian Dreadnought.
If David did not have an additional counterspell, which we don't think he does.
Oh, geez. Oh, no. Robin's like looking at this Mox, and he's like, why didn't I play this?
After getting double dazed.
It's getting late.
Would you run out the Dreadnought here if you're David, if you don't have a way to protect it?
Yeah. Robin's got like 1 or 2 cards in hand or something. So he must have been thinking to himself that he needs both island to cast a future Gush or a Gush that might be in his hand. But he's so close to 5 mana. I once again am asking that players cast Gush for 5
mana. Robin has said in the chat, he said, drew it off the Gush, okay? Sorry, I forgot to Gush first.
Oh, no. This is...
Is... What? Why? What? Wait. Oh, I was say this is not a card you want to counterspell with the Powder Keg at 2, right?
I mean, I think Robin's position is definitely could be in like a I've got all twos thing, but he has to play out this Quirion Dryad. Then he has to get, sink all of his effort into pumping up this Quirion Dryad, and then he's gonna get it kegged. So he's like finally gonna have dealt with the keg. I mean, I guess we completely underestimated the power of a keg on the table, right? So Rob invested all his resources to put this Meddling Mage on this table, but this keg on this table just like completely trumps Meddling Mage. Just once again, powder keg in conjunction with the Mishra's Factory.
Yeah, conjunction with the Mishra's Factory, I guess I'll point out. And so I'll go back to like in the pregame when I had read the conversation of like I put Mishra's Factory in my deck to combat Meddling Mage, and I kind of like scoffed at it. I'm like, I don't think it really like does that. Like, I don't know if it lines up that well. Like, what are you like racing it? And no, I was wrong. Like, it definitely changes the way like you're not able to attack with the Meddling Mage, and then you're just able to find time to sculpt
Just
a different game
nothing,
plan. Yeah,
you can just chill. I mean, it even helps with their brain freeze game plan.
Yeah.
So yeah. I also want to note that Raczka is keeping diligent notes on the order of the bottom of his library.
That's awesome. I guess like what you do have chunks of it, like especially with Flash of Insight. Yeah, that does make sense. It gives him a lot of information of I guess what his draws are. Like if you know like 10 cards at the bottom of your library, you can make different decisions based on what's left in the top of your deck.
He's got to write it as small as possible on that legal pad, though, because it is in full view. Yes! Thank you.
Hardcast Gush.
Thank you, David. And this is the point where Robin's cursing his deck. He's just like, why does my deck suck so bad? He's just like, I hate this stupid deck. Pretty classic stuff. Heck, he might even just be getting into factories. Okay, so this is the turn. We're going to go for Gush. We're going to have 1 million mana. So we'll have plenty of mana to even like hard cast foils and whatnot to fight against Robin's resistance. But I believe a Dreadnought is going to enter the battlefield this turn. Or we're just going to present another powder keg. Yeah. If Robin doesn't think that he'll win a long game, then he's got to stop these powder kegs. But
I mean, I don't think he will win a long game from this position.
Yeah, I mean, and the threat of brain freeze. I mean, it's a pretty tough spot, I think. And yeah, so no counter, no annul left around for this Dreadnought. I mean, this is what I fear, right? So like, in the case that it's a test bill for Dreadnought, then you're just kind of like, okay, well, you know, whatever. But Robin may have been fully convinced that David had pivoted to brain freeze, or he's sort of in this spot here.
All right, Disenchant attempts to kill the Dreadnought, but there's a reality ripple.
Yeah,
how many
cards
does Robin have?
Robin has very few. Okay. He's been on low resources. He did miss a land drop, so he's got something, but he's playing against known island and 3 blanks. So this Portent is going to deliver likely another Plowshares or whatever. Chilling on the top for Robin, but he then had the Mox, and then he like the Gushes are turned off because he played the Mox afterwards. And at this point, I have to think that the Psychatog might have been able to make it up to 13-13. So another point is that Robin could have just been holding the Mox just in anticipation to pitch to Psychatog. It's like one of the best uses for Mox late game is to be +1.5 to Psychatog. So I don't hate holding it.
Yeah, David's still got a bunch of cards, and only one of them we know is an island. I guess.
Well, he's got 3, and
he's got 4 total. Yeah, so 1.
Yeah, 3 unknowns, and you got to play without fear if you're Robin, and you know this is gonna be a Plowshares on upkeep that could be conceivably met with a Vision Charm. Oh, okay. Ooh. It's gonna be met with any card in David's deck now. So that Flash of Insight was super good.
Yeah, I would say like I guess that was another thing I criticized about the deck, is like having multiple Flash of Insights, and They seem pretty good in this.
I'm telling you, the Rochester guys, man, they just know they got some other stuff going on. Okay, they challenge the assumptions. They're making all this like shadowy tech. They're just like, this is what we're gonna do. We'll play Flash of Insight. Three's the magic number in Rochester. We have 3 copies of all this, and we're just like totally going to revolutionize what we're doing. So, let's just flip this right now. So Robin's taking 3 damage from the City of Brass over time. So he's at 17. This Dreadnought's going to crash in, put him at 5, and then all of a sudden that Mishra's Factory is going to be a lethal threat, and then this City of Brass could get turned off completely. So he did find Mox with Gush, but okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say you could chip in with a Factory here too, as well. I think.
Yeah, I would definitely send the Factory because you have so much mana. You have plenty of mana to do whatever you want. Robin only has like whatever cards in hand.
I guess if you're super confident that you just need the mana to counter any number of spells from Robin, that your Dreadnought's going to stay in play. All right.
But David is just all in, and he put that card down so quickly on that it must be a cover spell.
Yep.
I have to imagine there's like this Gush stuck in Robin's hand. He's just like looking at his City of Brass, looking at his planes. He's just like, I hate this deck so much. I hate this stupid deck. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Like the way these like the way that the mana and the cards, like each turn, each sequence, there's like the limiting factors like shift back and forth. There'll be a turn. Like, a turn that you don't think mana is going to matter, right? And then it comes down to just like double Daze.
Yeah.
And it turns out that mana was the only thing that mattered. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a good example of why you should run 4 Powder Keg per Alvaro. And also, even that turn with Psychatog, like Psychatog on the stack, gushing with Psychatog on the stack versus gushing with before. It's like, okay, well, maybe Robin was thinking that he just like wants to cast Gush at a later time, that he's not going to fight. I have it on Inside Info that Robin felt like he was disadvantaged, and that meant that he was going to take bigger risks. And I think that he's been nothing if not consistent about what his goals are in the match. Like, he's always played to basically try to shut the door as hard as possible on David. And I think that's definitely admirable. And who knows, this Meddling Mage on, well, it's just gonna get countered. Okay. I mean, David just has unlimited resources. He's got this Gush. He's got a Flash of Insight in his graveyard that's just going to be a Demonic Tutor. Yeah, I think this, I think this definitely, watching these games definitely makes me like reevaluate my read on the matchup. I think that there's like a few critical things I missed, which one is just that like, especially post sideboard with like 3 copies of Flash of Insight, David became a much more value oriented deck. As we pointed out, the impact of Mishra's Factory was just more than we could have imagined before going in. So huge props to David for identifying that was a effective solution to the problem. And yeah, I think in the absence of pressure from Robin, David was also just way better at hitting land drops. Okay, we had the Mage was naming. We're not going to know until after.
So one thing I want to note about the Flash of Insight and the
Geddon was still in. So wow, that changes things.
Yeah, they're just talking about the game.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
I guess I'll make my quick comment. I do like how David was keeping notes of all the cards, because if you, let's say you do it for 7, you probably keep like good cards, like the first 3 or 4 cards, and then probably like islands, and you don't want to get to the point like
you don't want to plow through it.
Yeah, you don't want to like if you're not doing like a flashback insight for like your entire deck, which is unlikely, you don't want to hit it like so that you like see all the good cards, and then your next like 4 draws are all islands. So I thought that was interesting. But let's jump down and listen into our players.
I'm not sure how am I good from there.
When I thought I was faded, I'm just like making sure I'm not doing something idiotic.
No.
I want to unmute everyone so we can all chat. Unless you want to chat separately first.
No, they will hear us anyway. We can unmute.
Okay.
So you boarded again for the last game. Did you board in Dreadnoughts again? Was that what was happening?
I just sided out the same cards I brought in. Keep you guessing.
Yeah, I just boarded in a Armageddon because you kept playing lands every game ever. So
yeah.
I just felt like, and it's also very good against your factory. So I thought if I could find some mana sources, I could actually do it with backup. The problem with this matchup, and this is like I've had a conversation with Lanny about this, and I know he disagrees, but it's you just have way more answers than I do. So the only way I feel like I can win is if I like temper you out early, and if I don't do that, it just gets real rough, man.
I mean, first of all,
I can try to counter Dreadnoughts, but like once we get to that point, I feel like I'm already losing.
First of all, I'm not an expert because this is my first like time playing a real life person, you know. But I do think that you have like an advantage in like the first 3 turns, and then it's kind of like even for like next 10, and then if it goes that late, I have an advantage. So yeah, I think you're right. You have the tempo.
The problem with the first 3 turns is also like you just gotta make him have it, right? And that's what Lanny told me. And I mean, he's right because I tried to go long before in testing, and it's absolutely awful.
Yeah.
I know you didn't board in Brain Freeze, but the fact that you can do it is enough of a threat for me to like not do the other plan. So I was considering boarding out all of my Dryads and just playing like a protect the Meddling Mage game and keeping like an Armageddon or 2 in, but if you have Brain Freeze in your deck, that's just like an insta-lose. So
I think Brain Freeze is an option, but I think it's not great against Psychatog. Because if I Brain Freeze you for like 20 and then you play Psychatog, I'm like, oh, sure, great.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't bring it in.
Actually kill me. You do have to actually kill me for sure. Yeah, but so if I go for it in the early turns, then I tap out for you to be able to resolve a Dreadnought or for you to be able to resolve a Powder Keg, and it just feels so like, all right, well then me tapping out kind of didn't do anything. But if I get to untap again, it's fantastic. It just feels rare that you get that chance. You did keep a lot of 7s, so you kept a lot of hands without Dreadnoughts, I realized. So I felt a little bit more happy to just play out my creatures early.
Yeah. I can walk in, like if I play out early Dreadnought and you daze it, like I'm like that's so bad. And then you have swords, you have disenchant, so you have enough answers. I don't really feel
I have too many answers. Early. That's the problem, right? Like I feel like with all of these answers, I feel like I'm not serious. I don't know, like it's not like Fire Ice is so exciting, but it feels like I did win game 4 to be fair, but I sat there with like 2 disenchants and 2 swords or something for such a long time. And an Annul or something.
Yeah.
And because you had factory plus keg, like or whatever it was, like there was nothing I could do.
Yeah, that's like a great position.
Factory was certainly fantastic.
Yeah, and you can't like play extra creatures. Like I almost counterspelled that Dryad because I just never thought you would play another one. I'm like,
I wanted you to crack. You know, I wanted you to crack.
Okay. So. Yeah, so I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I can't believe you did that. But you know, if you're gonna discard it, that was the last game.
That was the last game. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't play in the monthly because I was like, I don't have enough time to do both. So I tested this on Mox Forge just a little bit, and the best strategy I came up with was actually taking all the Mox Diamonds, and the Armageddons and like Shava cantrip. Because you want to jam early, but also you don't need like Mox Diamond. Just, I mean, the games are going to go long in post games.
If you cut Mox Diamond and cantrips, you're not gonna jam early because you need black and green.
You jam like early.
If your plan is early Quirion Dryad, you just like maybe you can cut 1 Mox, but you can't cut more than that. That's the problem. I was like really happy to board out Moxes when my plan was to board out Quirion Dryads. But as soon as I decided to keep all 4 in, because I kept losing the long games, then it was just kind of, the Moxes are unnecessary evil.
I tried a few different variations. That's what I had the most success with. Maybe, you know, it's based on how you play, but that's what helped me the most. But it's a kind of fun matchup because there is like this different areas, and you have to like figure out what your plan is, and you can go like, even your build, like I can go Brain Freeze plan, but you can go a few different plans too. So it's kind of cool.
Well, I can't. When you're a factory, I can't go too many plans because Mage is just a lockdown piece. It's not an actual win con anymore. So I can play Mage to give myself time, but I need to find a Dryad, and I need to find a Psychatog, right? Like otherwise, I can't actually win the game. Or in this final game, I could have found the. I boarded in 1 Armageddon inside my starting hand, and I just slide. I would have liked to draw it a few turns later, but I mean, it was whatever. But I mean, there was a time there, like, you know, turn 6 to 8 or whatever, when I considered just jamming and eating a counterspell on it. Because now I scooped with it in hand, right? So at least I could have eaten a counterspell at some point, but you had triple protection now towards the end anyway.
I think it just costs too much. It costs
a ton, but the fact that you board, like you keep playing your lands the way you did means, I mean, you even hardcast a Gush, right? That means that Geddon becomes kind of insane. And if it's a must counter, I'm kind of fine with that, you know, assuming I have like 6 mana, but I had 4 mana most of this game, sadly. But if I have like 6 mana and I can get and force you to counter it, like, all right, it's like the most expensive dress ever, but I'm kind of fine with it.
I usually tend to play with just like keeping a 1 or 2 Gush in my hand at all times. So I don't know, but you know, that's the cool thing is with all the sideboarding, it's so individual.
Did you say you tend to play with 1 Gush in your hand at all times? You just always
I don't. I
saw 1 Gush that entire game. I couldn't play.
I don't usually cast them. I just keep in my hand for a rainy day, you know.
Well, you cast 3 this game, to be fair.
True. Yeah. We traded a lot.
Yeah. Well, I cast 1.
You definitely cast more than 1 Gush, Robin, in the entire match.
In game.
Well, the final game.
Oh, in the game. I thought you meant the entire match. Okay.
I cast a ton of Gushes, but in the final game, I cast
okay. I thought you meant the entire match. Okay.
No, God, no. I cast a lot of Gushes. I like to cast mine pretty early because if I don't have a land drop and I'm playing a Meddling Mage, like it's usually correct. I mean, I don't know. I'm new as hell to this fucking deck, but it feels correct to Gush first usually. See if I can find foil or fake foil and, you know, replay land and feel pretty confident. But this is my second time playing this deck, so I mean, I went 4-2 the first time and I did well now, but I'm sorry I let the Feb Cabal down because I'm the only player in the top 4 now who isn't part of the Feb Cabal actually.
Well, you didn't play Feb.
Neither did Michael Arnold, but Michael Arnold is still in the Cabal and he's still in the top 4, right? That's the point.
I don't know. I just feel like you probably got your ritual sacrifice wrong during the pregame because it just like doesn't work on decks.
I feel like this is just how it works for me. Like I told Lanny before that I have played on camera outside of the PSS. In the PSS, and when I played on camera in the like 1-day event that I lost in the finals, it went fine. But anytime I've been on camera for a monthly event, I have instantly lost. I think I'm like 0-8 or something on camera. And I'm not even that nervous of a guy. It's just like, I don't know. I don't believe in jinxes, but it's just bad luck, I guess.
Well, it's negative plot armor. The camera can take away your plot armor.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting talking about the match for a little bit. Watching it play out.
Let me get my camera shifted.
One of the points that you made is generally based around this point that you had where Raczka has more answers in his deck, but that becomes a little bit more of a wash when you're able to so effectively trade Quirion Dryad with Quirion Dryad and Meddling Mage with his answers, and because Psychatog can always come down and be a game-ending threat. So it felt like, obviously, it didn't feel to me watching like anybody was a clear favorite as turns progressed, except for the player that wasn't hitting their land drops and discarding the hand size. So
that I can certainly agree with.
Yeah. So to me, it really did feel like a Dreadnought mirror. You just have different cards, right? So Meddling Mage and Powder Keg and Mishra's Factory and Quirion Dryad and Dreadnoughts and sometimes Misdirection.
Misdirection is one hell of a card. It was like when we were testing, the Misdirection was the scariest card.
Yeah.
Always the scariest card.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like the symmetry is just always broken by who has more mana and who casts more copies of Gush, right?
Yeah.
And
that's why I pointed out how Game 5 played out.
Yeah, exactly.
I missed land drops.
Well,
I was behind on both lands and Gush. Gushing 3 times and having more lands than your opponent, like two to 3 times as many, that's a good position.
Well, once you start hard casting Gushes, you're just in such a favorable position, because then you just have it all, right? You have tempo and cards. You know, normally you give up a little bit of tempo, and I think it's like important to point out that, and this always happens with Dreadnought, the player playing against the Dreadnought mana has double or triple the mana to interact with the Dreadnought, right? Because they have it the turn that the Dreadnought's cast, they get to untap, they get to go again, and then sometimes they get another untap step. So on that paradigm, you nearly always have time to cast all the spells in your hand, annuls and counterspells and Swords of Plowshares and Disenchants, and play around Daze. So that's like one advantage, and it looked to me that Raczka didn't board out any copies of Daze, which I don't think is incorrect, because I still think Daze is awesome. But if either player is
in Game 4, right? When
I totally messed up with it.
I played straight into the Daze.
Yeah, and I discarded 2 Dazes. I was like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Each time I say, if you Daze me now, chat is gonna be so pissed off. But each time they resolve. So yeah, discarded 2, and I was like, I'm just gonna jam. Fuck it.
No, and that's like kind of after hand sizing a Daze, you're just kind of like, okay, well, just this is the time. And then as soon as I saw that spell get counterspelled, I think whichever game it was, I was just kind of like, okay, well, that's a great outcome. But yeah, I think it's just a great match. The threat evaluation involved, figuring out like what matters from turn to turn. I agree that Game 5, saw the resource, the advantage bar just kind of go super, super far in David's favor. But the way every game played out before that, really showcased like the different forms of leverage and how tactical each player had to be from their positions and each decision. And I think I want to also make it clear, because you were maybe worried about this when we were talking pregame, was I don't think that you made any embarrassing mistakes. I mean, I was definitely yelling at the monitor, but I think both players played extremely tight.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting match. It's literally my first time playing a Xerox Mirror ever. I'm so new to playing. Like as people kind of know, I'm not a control player really. But somehow I picked up this deck and started playing it like a control deck, which is why testing in this matchup was so awkward, because like this does not work out. Like I cannot play my normal games playstyle here. But it's been fun. It's been fun learning. I can see why people talk about the Dreadnought Mirror as super entertaining. When they're on equal footing, a lot of exciting things do happen, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Hoyp was giving me, giving me grief. He was just like, well, this deck is just the Rock, and I'm like, it is the Rock. So maybe there's a reason why you're having such a good time.
Yeah, to some degree it is like it's Rage Rock. It's blue Rage Rock. But it is blue Rage Rock. It's Xerox, right? Like that is, I know it's Lanny Rock, but I call it Xerox. It's just such a good name. It's just such a good name, man.
Xerox. So, I mean, I don't even know who said it first. I think it
was Rich Shave. Iñaki or Rich Shave.
Yeah,
one of the smart asses.
And David, I just wanted to say it was cool to watch you play and watch everything come together as planned with regards to Mishra's Factory and 3 copies of Flash of Insight. I know we spent a bit of time talking on Discord and talking online, and it's cool to put a face to the name finally. And
yeah, you've been on Discord for so long, and I've never seen you. So
I have a new baby, and there's nothing else to do.
All right.
Well, there's a lot to do, but you know what I mean.
So yeah, awesome stuff. I think we were all immediately humbled by how powerful Mishra's Factory was, and just how it completely changed. Like, it can't be overstated that the game would have just gone, it would have gone entirely differently. In fact, Robin would have just won.
I boarded Armageddon back in a Gush mirror because of it. So I think that's kind of funny. And I actually think the one copy is correct the more I think about it, but like it's still kind of crazy. So
yeah.
Did you show how you sideboarded? Because I don't think I asked.
I sided in Flash, Powder, and Misdirection.
Yeah, it was -2 Portent, so -1 Dreadnought, -1 Stifle, -1 Island, and
Portent, Stifle.
It might have been 2 Stifles.
Okay. Two Stifle, 2 Portent, Island, Dreadnought.
Okay.
Check the VODs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because like Flash is just like.
I have a question for you.
Sure. Go for it.
Do you have shorthands for every card in your deck? Because I understand keeping track of what you put on the bottom, but your notes were minuscule. Like literally, like I see like you know one line or something. I'm like, how does he know what that means? Does he have a code system?
Oh yeah, I have a code. I have a code.
You do. Okay.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It's all one letter.
I understand the purpose of it because you only have Portent to shuffle, so it makes a lot of sense. But then I was like, he keeps writing this like 2 lines for something, and I'm like, what is he like? What are these cards? But maybe there's not a lot of cards that share first letter, and somewhat easy.
When you flash late game for like 10, you sometimes want to do 9 because then you basically draw the other card you want, and you can like draw into a Gush, and then it just goes crazy. So, I was playing against a brain freeze mirror, and I was like, oh wait, like I have to start keeping track of this because when they brain freeze me, like halfway through, I can draw a card with a flash or whatever, or rearrange my deck so they mill the cards I don't want. So,
that's really cool. Yeah.
That's extremely next level. Like I can't imagine the look on your opponent's face when you're just like, after the 5th copy of Brain Freeze resolves, I'm gonna stop you really quick.
Yeah. Well, I actually played against Blue Storm, and I haven't really played that matchup, but I realized, oh yeah, he's not just brainstorm me or brain freeze me once, he's like doing it multiple times to kill me. So the first brain freeze resolved, and then he brain freezed me again, and I just flashed for find the Stifle, and it was just like it just felt so nice.
That is a incredible
really
use
cool.
of Flash's insight. And in fact, like I was like talking about deep analysis in the pregame, but it appears that even I cannot deny.
Quantity, Lanny.
I guess I thought there was lost value for the added copies. Like I've seen 1 a lot, and that makes sense. But here, like just you being able to like get some way to the bottom, but then also makes the next one like more powerful is really interesting. So.
Well, especially in this matchup, David is going to counter a lot of shit. To be fair, so like there's generally shit's going to land in the graveyard. Like it's up pretty fast.
You have 4 Gush, I have 4 Gush, 3 Flash. So, it's I just have more draw spells, more 2-for-1s. And I think it's kind of interesting because Flash never saw play in Standard really because Psychatog was the best way to kill, and you can't play both. So I feel like it's just like an undervalued card in a lot of ways because it never had a home before.
It's a sweet card,
yeah.
Sweet card.
Good point. And also, it's exile blue cards, right? So like you really want to be a mono blue deck or close to it, to leverage out a Flash. I mean, I guess you can play a lot of cantrips in any deck, but
yeah, but I mean, things played out kind of as expected. It sounds like you were prepared for the late game, and Lanny finally convinced me that I need to play for the early game, and I did my best. But it was not always easy.
I convinced you using your own observations. I think I would have changed
one match with the other configuration, and I said this fucking sucks, man. And then I went back to the normal one.
Yeah. No, I think both. I mean, I think this is a VOD that I would point to for anybody looking to learn about the matchup or either deck, or just Magic in general, just because like so much happened in that match, and there's just so much to like learn from that. So, you know, you guys really put on an awesome display, and I mean, that was just like some of the most exciting stuff, you know, I've seen out of this Fall Brawl so far.
I'm glad to give the full 5, and I'm glad to give not. I mean, don't get me wrong.
We don't have to play 5 games.
I'm a big fan, but I'm glad it is not all Hermit Fed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I'd like to say 2 things. One, first of all, I think you played awesome. I think you did good. I didn't see anything. I was like, oh my gosh, you know. I feel like this matchup is very play draw dependent. You know, for the games is just whoever went first, you know, and then I also like to recognize my faults, and I did totally discard those 2 days. I think that was a misplay, and then I didn't animate my factory correctly. I should use the island, so I can still block. But you know, so I like to put down what I did wrong. So I going forward, I learned something.
Well, there's more Fall Brawl down the line for you.
Would you have lived, David, if I double swords and you activated the other factory with the first one? Would you have lived another turn? Like, because you had Keg would have gone to 2, but I still had Psychatog. So like, did you have enough in your hand to be able to handle the Psychatog?
I had Vision Charm and Dreadnought, and I would have powder keg both your whole board. I get rid of the Psychatog.
No, I had. How do you get rid of the Psychatog though?
The Misdirection.
Oh, the Misdirection was targeting Psychatog. You're right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I'd kill that, and then
very clear with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Well, I was like, oh, I need to keep the Vision Charm up, you know.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. If you activate with the didn't you?
I had islands,
factories.
Yeah.
I was thinking about you Vision Charming the factory, but that was at another point in the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, interesting. Well, you know, this is why you're the better player and deserve to win, because I'm like, I probably misplayed. I don't know. Probably. At some point, right? There was a lot of turns. I must have played like 60 turns, man. I definitely
like
you absolutely probably did not play a 100% accurate game, and there's
no one that would have.
I cannot look back at it right now and say at that point I misplayed. At that point I misplayed. If I look at the VOD, I probably can.
There'll be a lot to learn.
I was telling Robin game 5, I was like, I'm fading. I don't know what's going on anymore.
No, definitely. I would have been tired.
At the start, we were both like, we're such like early birds. Like he's like, I go to bed at 9. I'm like, I go to bed at 9:30, man. We gotta get done with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Avery's got to get to volleyball. So
yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was great. To anyone out there, like, Gat is still a good deck, even though I lost there. You saw some power from it. It's really fun. It's clearly not tier 1, but it's really fun. And for those that enjoy fun and still want to sling some blue spells, then it's a great deck. Pick it up.
And it's customizable, which is great.
Yeah, swords are coming back in the main. I've lost so many game 1s in this tournament. I feel like I've lost almost every game 1 in the Brawl.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everyone. This was a great experience, and yeah,
we'll see you in the semifinals. So congratulations.
Yeah, great work.
Yeah, good luck, David.
Thank you, Robin.
All right.
Have a good night.
Good to see you guys.
Bye, guys. All right, Lanny, let's wrap things up. So we have all our quarterfinals for the Fall Brawl played. We have 2 Hermit Fed players moving on, the Survival Elves, and then the Mono Blue Stiflenought. So I guess the Hermit Fed players are split. So
it's looking like Galen versus David and McLean versus Mike Garnold, right?
Okay. Looking forward to doing the streams on those. I'll keep you posted on when we're going to do those. So we still have a few more matches of the Fall Brawl before we declare our winner. But I want to thank Lanny for jumping in the booth. I'm glad that you got to do coverage for the Gro-A-Tog list. I don't think there was any other person that I thought should do it instead of you. So I'm glad you were available. But yeah, and I thought those matches, all those games were really interesting. It's just nice, like the pace of play, like where the pacing of the game, where you have room to breathe and kind of set up a game plan, I think is really nice. And anytime you kind of have those blue cards involved, they usually are less aggressive, and you really have a lot of agency of how the game goes, and I think it's really interesting. So
yeah, totally agree. Premodern at its finest.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks everyone for the chat. Thanks everyone for watching the videos. Thanks everyone for the support. We love it. And until next time, take care.